This guy sprinted barefoot over sharp blades. He removed his shoes and continued running without pausing. Even when he completely lost sensation in his feet, they healed in moments. That was because on his 18th birthday, Gwangik Yu uncovered the truth. He was born with a dual lineage, the legendary ability of immortality, and the skill of a shapeshifter. One day after his birthday, when he awakened, his body had changed completely. Muscles developed and his power soared. That's how his training commenced, to become an immortal weapon, falling from cliffs, running over blades, lifting weights in the gym, mastering every kind of weapon to the maximum. All of it to harness the power of a perfect hybrid. The world appeared to be an entirely ordinary place. Well-mannered individuals were crossing at crosswalks until a strange energy began creeping towards someone's foot. Looking down, the guy was truly frightened. His body was being drawn into a strange circle. That's when black holes began to emerge. While that unfortunate extra was being pulled in, the others chose to flee for their lives. From that very spot, something extremely dark started to rise. Sinister, perilous creatures ready to end it all. Soon, news helicopters were hovering over the area, noting that the hole was expanding. As time went on, the death toll increased. A little child with a large head lay injured on the ground. Nearby stood someone who appeared to know what they were doing. This citizen gazed at the creatures without any fear. This is a tale about an extraordinary world. Black holes emerged everywhere. In the sky, the ocean, and on the land. They were gateways, bringing unseen beings that began slaughtering humanity. That's when the supernaturals emerged. They are simply individuals possessing those abilities I mentioned previously. Those who can lose limbs, regenerate, and continue living are referred to as immortals. Others can shift into lethal beasts. They are the Transformers. Mages definitely wield magic, nothing new in that description. Thanks to these superpowered individuals, peace returned to the world. The year it all transpired was dubbed the Terrible Year. Once order was restored, the world turned its attention to these supernatural beings as they intimidated ordinary people. Eventually, the government intervened to regulate and organize these unique individuals. With the involvement of global corporations, organizations began to form like the one for psychic users. Mages chose to remain hidden for safety. 20 years later, they still coexist with normal individuals. Meanwhile, a boy is on his phone inside a supermarket. His father mentions he has something to share, and that he shouldn't be too shocked. With no build-up, the man states his son is also an immortal. The boy was astonished, but the truth eventually settled in. Still shopping for groceries? His elderly father mentioned that the ability must have been passed down. The boy is curious why they're having such a significant discussion while shopping. The father requested the boy to keep it confidential. Not even his mother should find out about this. Immortals are recognized for their youthful appearance. The father stated the son might not have inherited all abilities, but he is unquestionably an immortal. The powers will manifest on his 20th birthday, occurring at 11 p.m. that evening. Stunned by all this information, the boy is taken aback by his father's composure. At that moment, the older man, who doesn't seem old at all, remembered he needed to pick up garlic. The boy recalled his mother asking for fresher garlic because it's easier to peel. Once again, the father urged his son not to mention anything to his mother. She is unaware that she wed an immortal. This is serious enough that their marriage could be at risk. Since they were already at the checkout, the boy suggested they continue their discussion outside. As he carried the grocery bags, the boy was observed by his father. It would make any dad proud. He admired the young man's strength, able to carry all the bags in one go. It's rare for immortals to be strong. Perhaps it's because the boy enjoys working out. Our protagonist offered an awkward smile, fully aware he's essentially inactive. His strength must stem from other factors, a second secret, something the boy has kept to himself. Finally, they reached home and were greeted by the woman inside. Our protagonist has known this secondary secret for a long time, long before learning who was an immortal. The couple appears very much in love. The matriarch is delighted that the garlic was purchased correctly, just as she requested from her husband. Witnessing all that excessive affection is embarrassing for our protagonist. It's strange because this couple is full of secrets, typically a recipe for disaster. The matriarch is a transformer. All this occurred 2 years ago when she informed our boy. He surely must have inherited that trait too. Powers manifest at age 18 and were supposed to arise that very night, surprising news for the protagonist. After revealing this, the matriarch urgently asked him to keep it confidential and not inform his father. Returning to the protagonist, they asked the boy what he wished for his birthday. Being a very reasonable person, he expressed gratitude for having such a wonderful family. His parents said he would regret saying that. Nonetheless, the matriarch appreciated that attitude. The boy is articulate, just like her husband. Meanwhile, the old man remarked that their son inherited his mother's character. There's so much affection between them. They don't come across as two major deceivers. But for the protagonist, that's fine. An immortal and a transformer, quite fascinating. His birthday is coming up traditionally, and our boy doesn't comprehend why his parents uphold the deceptions. Later in his own room, the boy tried to unwind. Gazing at the clock, he understood it would soon be 11 p.m. He recalled his chat with the old man. Filled with curiosity, the boy wanted to learn if becoming an immortal was painful. The old man mentioned his body ached slightly during the process, then everything became extremely cold. That was when his senses heightened. Although it felt odd, he did not experience pain. This reminded the protagonist of when he transformed. He nearly perished. Asserting his mother was merely an ordinary human, our boy inquired if he would genuinely inherit immortality. His father assured him, stating those genes are very dominant. Just as he was about to reveal something personal, the old man reconsidered, believing the boy wouldn't be impacted by it anyway. This naturally left our protagonist quite inquisitive. Reclining in bed, our boy ponders if he can inherit both traits. After all, he's already a shapeshifter, and he has no clue what to say to his dad if immortality doesn't manifest in him as well. Not wanting to dwell on it, the boy opted to simply sleep. Yet that night was challenging. Our boy is in distress, recalling what someone mentioned about that dreadful year. Back when there were no black holes on Earth, no one was aware of immortals or shapeshifters. Life was quite mundane. Meanwhile, our boy is experiencing a near-death episode. The agony is severe. Then his eyes began to glow in a very unusual manner. Now we are taken 2 years back when our boy turned 18. Looking into the mirror, he noticed his body had become noticeably stronger. All that muscle mass just from becoming a shapeshifter. He was caught off guard by his mother, who already anticipated this outcome. The matriarch asked if he was relishing the sensation. Our boy was clearly embarrassed, but she merely came to see if all was well. The protagonist stated he's feeling a surge of power and his senses are heightened. He simply doesn't grasp why the matriarch hadn't informed him about anything. When the transformation occurred, it felt as though his hair was being torn out. He had also expelled a significant amount of blood and felt like every one of his muscles was ripping into countless fragments. The matriarch explained that telling him wouldn't have altered anything. He would have endured the pain regardless. Very concerned, our boy asked if this awakening would recur, but she assured him everything would revert to normal. This left our protagonist very relieved, as he never wants to endure that again. Back in the present, the poor guy is fighting for his life. If there's one thing he isn't feeling at the moment, it's comfort. The next day, the boy tugged at the skin on his face slightly. Even though he became an immortal, he still experiences pain. His appearance hadn't altered either. The only noticeable difference is in his eyes. He can see a bit better in the dark now. His senses are even more acute as well, particularly his hearing. Sounds can make him quite sensitive. Now he's attempting to manage all that input, striving to separate himself from the overwhelming noise to find a bit of tranquility. At last, everything went back to normal. Sighing in relief, our main character understood that he truly had become an immortal. But what genuinely concerns him is pondering whether he can keep these powers concealed. Outside, they're calling for Gwangik to come have breakfast. Goodness, what a dreadful name. When he stepped out of the bathroom, our boy was genuinely astonished. That breakfast appears to be a 5-star hotel meal. It must be his fortunate day. Things are already beginning beautifully. Only then did he realize that everyone in that home consumes a lot. Our boy heard that shapeshifters require many calories, but his father, who is an immortal, also eats a substantial amount. Perhaps all supernatural beings need plenty of food. In fact, the old man noticed there's less food than usual. The matriarch mentioned she's still preparing rice, but it will be ready shortly. Our boy finds it ridiculous that these two never suspected one another. Just then, the old man recalled he had something important to discuss with his son. He needs to get ready for the civil service exam. This seems to be unexpected news. The old man stated a significant opportunity just arose, but the matriarch disapproved. The boy is 20. He should attend college. Going to college is essential, but it's preferable to be a productive member of society. The matriarch agrees with this, but she doesn't want to witness her son studying all day for this exam. The old man believes our protagonist is quite intelligent and won't even need to study much. This is the first time the boy has observed such a heated argument between the two. Most immortals are employed by the government. Perhaps that's why his father desires something like this. The issue is that the matriarch must have other intentions. Once again, we return to the past. Our protagonist managed to perform 15 pull-ups, which is impressive. He could barely achieve 2 before his awakening. The matriarch stated that shapeshifters are 3 times stronger than an average human. Now the protagonist comprehends why his own mother is so powerful, especially since she has never ceased training throughout the years. There is another area where they excel as well. Shapeshifters possess remarkable instincts, and soon the boy will feel guided by them too. This is quite perplexing information. Our protagonist hasn't experienced anything yet, and the matriarch mentioned instincts can be somewhat troublesome within society. Thus, he must train to master them. That's why she hopes for him to attend college and find a conventional job. The boy's grandfather has good connections with companies that hire shapeshifters. Hence, he needs to perform well in college. In that position, he will be trained like a shapeshifter. Since his parents wish to determine what their son will do, they recognized it's ultimately up to him to shape his own future. This ultimately left our poor protagonist at a perilous crossroads. The reality is, he has a third option, but he never revealed it to his parents. He mentioned he would like to join the Navy and become a Marine. The boy's parents fell into utter silence. The matriarch became furious because she knows her son is a shapeshifter and she didn't want to see him as a regular soldier. She stated the boy still hasn't considered this properly. The protagonist countered that he's already 20 and knows quite well how to make his own choices, but nothing he says seems to alter that woman's mood. She's growing even more enraged. However, the old man liked the notion. Joining the Navy doesn't seem so terrible. Certainly, the protagonist doesn't wish to pursue this merely for the uniform. It's natural for young people to want to defend their own country, especially in this peculiar world. For the old man, it could be intriguing. The boy won't be dispatched to the first armed conflict that arises. He will undergo basic training and be assigned to some random base. Our protagonist realized he is nearly achieving what he desires, but his mother stated that won't occur until the old man recalled the civil service exam again. The stipulation is that he takes this exam then joins the army. In fact, this could bolster the boy's military career, our protagonist contemplating the options. Deciding he would take the exam, the old man stated he needs to study hard to perform very well. Since he is quite interested in this, he has already considered a private tutor for the boy. The matter appears to have been settled, but the protagonist noticed the matriarch disapproved. That same day, our boy needed to take a brief trip to prepare for this exam. This private tutor is a farmer who enjoys living in solitude. The protagonist never envisioned he would study for this exam one day because his ambition is to be a Marine. While on the bus, he decided to occupy himself with his phone. The news about the world isn't particularly engaging. Conflicts are becoming increasingly frequent. This ended up disheartening our boy. Perhaps becoming military isn't as cool as he thought. All this is due to the emergence of white holes, which appeared right after the black holes. While items emerge from black holes, white holes are entry points granting access to the invader's dimension filled with various new minerals, plants, and creatures, resources that can be utilized. Humanity continues to search for new resources. Shapeshifters are at the forefront in this battle due to their physical power. That's why the matriarch wouldn't want her son to enlist. The truth is, the protagonist doesn't want to be merely military. He aspires to be part of something even greater. The enigmatic farmer received a call from the old man, informing him that the young man will be arriving soon to prepare for the exam. The farmer assured he won't go easy just because he's teaching his friend's son. He vowed to whip him into shape. That is practically a certainty. Poor protagonist, he doesn't even realize what lies ahead. The farmer and our protagonist are now gazing at each other intently. Full of uncertainties, the farmer inquired who the boy is. Our protagonist replied that he is the old man's son, but that's not the information the farmer is seeking. That young man doesn't even resemble an immortal since he has a noticeably strong physique. Our protagonist mentioned he is a hybrid, but the farmer found that peculiar. Immortals are quite genetically dominant, and he knows precisely who the boy's father is. It doesn't add up that human genes caused so many alterations. The protagonist stated his mother's blood is very powerful as well. The entire narrative was deemed odd by the farmer. Nevertheless, he requested to accompany them. After all, this is private instruction. And the protagonist recalled why he was in this area. Following the old man's guidance, he ventured to that unforgiving location to prepare for the exams. And that farmer in the hat, looking like a Bear Grylls impersonator, is our boy's instructor. Surely he must be an immortal as well. A bit curious, the protagonist inquired if there was a temple nearby. The farmer considered that a rather strange question. But what concerns the protagonist is that they are going deeper and deeper into the mountains, until they finally reach their destination, and our protagonist was not pleased with what he discovered. It's a quite basic place, just a fire pit and a small cabin. Our protagonist wants to know what on earth he's going to learn in a location like this. He thought he came here to study. The farmer asked if the boy had truly awakened and if he'd assessed his abilities yet. The protagonist mentioned he attempted to cut himself, and indeed the injury healed rapidly. Notice as the boy had grasped the fundamentals, the farmer asked if he understood how immortals mend their own injuries. The truth is, even the farmer does not have the answer to that because he doesn't need to know the basics of healing. The essential aspect is resilience. The greater an immortal's endurance, the better their healing capabilities. The second component is the nerves. The sharper their senses, the more pain they'll experience. If he can manage that, he can better recognize his own injuries. The aim of that training is to enhance the boy's endurance and the control he has over his own senses. After explaining this, the farmer asked if the boy had any remaining questions. The protagonist replied there was something he didn't comprehend. He wants to know if he truly has to walk on that path filled with knives. The farmer said the protagonist must learn to control his own body. But to our boy, that makes no sense. Noticing that he speaks too much, the farmer asked why the boy is even taking the exam since this training is also part of the test. Only then did he inquire if the boy isn't going to be part of the Immortal Task Force. But our protagonist seems entirely unaware of this information. Evidently, the old man didn't disclose everything he knows. The farmer said it's similar to the military. If the boy doesn't wish to be involved, he doesn't have to undergo that training. But to achieve what he truly desires, our protagonist realized he must succeed in this training. Since he might ruin his clothes, the farmer handed him some ridiculous shorts. Now the protagonist is barefoot. Coming to the realization that this exam is going to be somewhat different from what he anticipated, the farmer instructed the boy to start running. He doesn't have all the time in the world. The protagonist sighed heavily. Filling himself with resolve, he began walking down that path. His feet started being pierced by the blades. While the boy is shouting, the farmer told him to keep running. If he were pursued by foes, things would be far worse. The blades began to slice down to our protagonist's very bones. By the conclusion of that day, his legs were extremely fatigued. The training was grueling. The farmer observed the boy managed to evade some blades, a sign he has excellent reflexes. But there was something even more remarkable. The boy's healing ability is truly exceptional. For it to be refined, it's necessary for him to sustain a bit more injury, so he shouldn't avoid the blades. He was directed to step with enough force to break his own legs. Now the boy must stop whining and return to running without delay. While the boy suffers, the farmer notices something unique. After completing that course, the farmer remarked an immortal won't perish so easily. It's time for the boy to start running again. Our protagonist is curious when it will come to an end. The farmer explained they must do this a bit longer. He needs to surpass the initial shock and enhance his pain threshold. Those blades are meant to prepare him for moments of distress. And the farmer wants to know why the boy hasn't gone into shock yet. But only the protagonist knows he is also a shifter. He would never be shocked by being hurt like that. That's why our protagonist asked if there's an alternative method. The farmer inquired how fast he can run 50 meters. The protagonist replied he can do it in 6 seconds. That is essentially the length of that knife course. If the boy finishes the route in that duration, they complete that phase. That seems to have inspired our protagonist. He's now resolved to accomplish it in the shortest time possible. He also exaggerated about the 6 seconds. That's his time when he's taking it easy. It's definitely going to hurt a lot, but our boy will manage his own senses. Completing that course in 6 seconds will be easier than expected. The protagonist moved toward the blades without any fear, leaving the poor farmer quite astonished. Our boy continues running flawlessly until he finally reached the other side in just 6 seconds. Though it was quick, he's panting heavily, and the farmer still doesn't comprehend it. Realizing the protagonist is truly a very different kind of person, he asked him to try it one more time to see if he could match the same time. To compel the boy to do it again, the farmer said he forgot to time it. But ultimately, they proceeded to the next training, and a rather strange necklace was given to our boy. It looks much more like a pet collar. The farmer stated it's essential for the next exercise, instructing the protagonist to place it around his own neck. In this next training, our protagonist will need to learn to regulate his own breath. Only then did he realize why there were so many metal weights on that collar. When the farmer presses a button, that necklace, which is essentially a collar, will constrict around the boy's neck. He also instructed our protagonist to keep it on. He just sprinted through a knife track. He can't quit now. Our boy then, folks, his name is Dreadful. From this point on, he's Gustavo. And Gustavo inquired if they couldn't simply dive into water, but the farmer replied that's insufficient. That collar also simulates suffocation. It's a very thorough training. Losing your senses is concerning. The battle against the supernaturals taught humans how to confront them. In the farmer's era, they were hanged from trees to train in this phase. The newcomers suffer much less now, which Gustavo finds ridiculous. This training is sheer agony. But since he's not going to surrender, he asked what he must do to succeed. The farmer stated the boy will ultimately lose consciousness, so he must force himself to remain awake for at least 5 minutes. Additionally, the farmer warned the protagonist not to attempt to remove the device or snatch the controller from his hand. He might get his chest punctured, and that would hurt a lot. Finally, our boy is prepared. The farmer is prepared to press the button. Time to intensify the suffering. The protagonist's hands immediately began clawing at the ground. The strangulation device started to press against his neck very tightly. Gustavo can no longer stand. Completely in agony, he attempts to remove the device. But the farmer won't allow that and shoves the boy's hand away from the torturous collar. Noticing that Gustavo can still move around quite a bit, the farmer thought he was being too lenient. If the pain is too intense, the boy might just give in and faint. But Gustavo wants to know when this will come to an end. He's certain it's been over 5 minutes. His vision finally began to blur, as if his internal breaker was about to trip at any instant, or as if his eyes were about to burst right out of his face. Ultimately, our boy gave up. The device automatically turned off. The protagonist's eyes began to shine. His strength is slowly returning. The one puzzled by this was the farmer. He suspects the device simply malfunctioned because he hadn't shut anything off. Maybe the battery expired right at that moment. Even so, the collar ceased functioning and dropped from the protagonist's neck. Our warrior stated he nearly perished in that ordeal. Contradicting his words, the farmer remarked that wouldn't happen so easily. Since he hadn't fainted, Gustavo hopes he doesn't have to endure that again, because he believes he passed the 5-minute mark. In fact, the farmer did time it this time. Our boy managed to endure that suffering for nearly 13 whole minutes, which is truly impressive. The record until now is 8 minutes. The farmer's expression now is one of immense happiness and curiosity, like a child who just received the coolest toy. As the day was nearing its end, the farmer proposed they take a break. Gustavo didn't anticipate being fed in that spot. The farmer stated they must boost the boy's endurance, so food is essential. Making their way to the kitchen, Gustavo inquired if he could assist with anything. However, the farmer simply told the boy to sit down and wait. Truthfully, Gustavo doesn't even know how to cook, he only offered out of basic courtesy. A few minutes later, some unappetizing sludge was presented to him. It appeared utterly revolting. Gustavo gazed at it with genuine fear in his heart. He actually asked what ingredients the farmer had included, but the man said it would be better for the boy not to know what was in it. Outside, our boy is now hanging some laundry. While washing, he realized he should start preparing his own meals. It's time to master cooking. But what he truly needs at this moment is more guidance from the old man. It would be great to contact his dad right away. He's feeling extremely fatigued, so Gustavo also desperately desires a good night's rest. However, when he returned to that small house, he felt let down. After swatting a mosquito dead with his hand, he mentioned he had a question for the farmer. He wanted to know if there was any power in this place. The farmer simply said that lighting draws too many insects. Ignoring the boy, the farmer was already peacefully sleeping on the floor. Gustavo realized there wasn't much left to do, so he lay down as well. But just before falling asleep, he heard the farmer speak. He mentioned this was to enhance his senses. Since it was his first night, he might not even fall asleep. Before he could even finish those words, the farmer was astonished. Gustavo was already snoring right beside him. This is becoming increasingly impressive. The following day, breakfast was placed in front of our boy. As expected, it didn't appear appetizing at all. Nevertheless, Gustavo expressed his gratitude for the meal. The farmer explained that the metabolism of immortals is very quick, so they need to consume a lot. While staring at that culinary disaster, Gustavo asked what they would be training on that day. The farmer responded that they were going to learn cliff diving. It's so the boy can master breath control during free fall and sharpen his senses. Gustavo understood it's vital for an immortal to learn not to lose consciousness from impact or suffocation. The farmer agreed, but mentioned there's something else he needs to be cautious about. He can't lose his legs and compromise mobility. Arms, however, can function as shields. Losing an arm to protect the head can actually be quite beneficial. It also helps to guard the legs. Knives can be extremely hazardous for them, just like powerful explosives. But the farmer quickly urged the boy to eat up. They had to practice rigorously that day. As anticipated, our boy was thrown off a huge canyon, Lion King style. After finishing that drill, the boy returned home. The first thing he did on the bus was take out his phone to make a call. While chatting with his dad, Gustavo asked if he had indeed been sent to the right location. This puzzled the old man. Gustavo began recounting that bizarre training routine. The old man simply remarked it was acceptable since his son is an immortal. He wouldn't perish that easily. It's essential for the boy to understand his body's boundaries. The most fascinating part was that Gustavo realized he is actually quite strong. Now the kid is eager to know when the exam will take place. But the old man had to hang up because his wife started requesting assistance with chores. The reality is that knowing how the exam will unfold won't significantly alter Gustavo's life, so he just needs to take a break. Upon arriving home, our boy enjoyed a very soothing shower. Hot water truly is a blessing. He also played some games. After all, the kid is only 20. At this stage, games are more appealing than girls for some guys. Right after that, he had a meal with real food. He slept in an incredibly cozy, soft bed, unlike the experiences of sleeping outdoors. The next morning, Gustavo woke up feeling entirely refreshed, believing the day would be wonderful. Then the matriarch mentioned she needed the boy's company that day. Terrible news for the poor guy who just wanted to lounge around all day. The matriarch stated the kid needs to study for college and she has already packed his bags. She found a private tutor nearby who can assist him with entrance examinations. Our boy will be with this instructor for the next 2 days. But judging by the poor guy's expression, he already knows it won't be simple. A gloomy feeling began to consume his heart. It's going to be 2 days of hardship. Dropping the boy off at the designated address, the matriarch said she'd return to collect him soon. The kid asked if he wouldn't be introduced to his new tutor. But his mother bid farewell with some serious advice. He needs to be clever, especially with such a fragile body. Now our protagonist feels utterly abandoned, realizing the next 2 days will be challenging. Sadly, his family is quite complicated. The elevator continues descending until the door finally opens for the protagonist. He surveys the area, still quite wary. He notices that on this floor there are numerous treadmills and various weights. It's essentially a gym. It's the kind of facility Gustavo wasn't expecting to discover. Finally, someone approached him there. Our protagonist was very impressed. And that woman in workout attire, resembling a budget version of Wolverine's outfit, knows he is the matriarch's son. The protagonist's mother's name is in Korean, an ugly name by the way, so I'll refer to her as Selma. The boy validated his identity, also disclosing he doesn't know what he's doing there. The trainer was aware the child had been studying the previous days. That's a misuse of the physical talent he possesses. Poor guy can't speak the truth yet. The matriarch has a straightforward approach to educating her offspring. They must be accountable for their actions. Her delightful smile conceals a very strict woman. If he hadn't attended that boxing class with Selma, the unfortunate soul would get beaten up too much. Perhaps this training is a representation of that. The trainer handed Gustavo a watch. Since our boy is traumatized by strange gadgets, he inquired what it was. The trainer explained it's a device to measure things. Gustavo instantly thought he would be trained, and for that, he needs to be assessed by the trainer. She gestured towards the first machine. It's time to make the boy run. Our lad began taking his first strides on the treadmill, all while being closely observed. The trainer knew the child had never practiced in his life, and it's evident. He's actually rather pathetic. His heart rate is normal, but his running speed is terrible, poor guy. Aside from being severely critiqued, he just wanted to play video games all day. The trainer remarked that newcomers are very lazy these days. To our protagonist, this trainer doesn't even appear old enough to speak like that. Only then did he recall that superaturals age very slowly. Bored, he asked how long he would need to run. The trainer told him to be quiet and keep running. It's time to enhance that feeble body of his. She asserted Gustavo is going to transform into its new man, a remark that left our protagonist somewhat frightened. He stated he doesn't want a second mother, which made the trainer grin. The day is already winding down, and the protagonist continues running without ceasing. The trainer can't believe he's getting fatigued already. If he halts now, it would be a disgrace to all his ancestors. Quite out of breath, the boy asked how long he had been running. He found out he hadn't stopped running for 14 hours, which is truly astonishing. The poor guy didn't expect to be running all night. At least, during the immortal training, he got to sleep a bit. The trainer said that without practice, Gustavo is merely a novice, but to assist the boy, she opted to switch on a television in front of him. It displayed stretching exercises that he needs to perform immediately after this, so he must remember everything. You need a flexible body because being too stiff is a disadvantage. Gustavo would like to pose more questions, but he's too exhausted to speak. Not to mention he's the one who needs to keep track of the time. My mistake, guys, I was incorrect earlier. He needs to pay attention to the time because the trainer asks frequently. And the poor fellow still has to master those odd stretches while keeping track of everything the trainer says, true hardship. But hey, when it rains, it pours, right? Gustavo has already come a long way. He began recalling the days back at the cliff. The farmer had mentioned the boy can already manage his senses quite well, but it's still insufficient. He requires more control. It's not essential to concentrate on the sense you want to block to enhance the others. What he needs is to synchronize all of them at once, and that's precisely what the boy is doing now. He keeps an eye on the watch, commits the stretches to memory, and listens to the trainer's commands. All this while running continuously. The seconds are passing like an eternity until Gustavo finally finishes 24 hours of unceasing running. He can finally step off the treadmill. The trainer verified the time on her phone. It's a relief for her to see the kid is still thinking clearly. It's time to proceed to stretching. She gives a quick demonstration so the boy can learn the correct technique. The trainer began bending her body in quite an unusual way, leaving Gustavo very impressed. That woman is incredibly flexible for someone with so much muscle. It was the boy's turn to give it a go. He immediately tried to arch his back, but his body is very stiff and he barely achieved the full range of motion. The trainer stated that flexibility develops gradually. You need to repeat the exercises while stretching the muscles slowly, but our boy is also an immortal. He knows his body recovers easily. So he forced the position right away, making some very strange noises and alarming his trainer. Clearly concerned, she rushed to assist the poor guy. That sound shouldn't have occurred. She advised him not to exert too much pressure on this part, but Gustavo insisted he was okay. Wiggling his fingers slightly, Gustavo demonstrated he had managed to master that position. That's when the trainer realized this kid is genuinely peculiar. In fact, the poor guy couldn't even return to normal and required assistance doing it. Since he had trained enough, it was time for a meal, a beautiful piece of meat. It's practically a whole pig. Gustavo inquired if they were going to eat that by themselves, and the trainer replied that the meat is all for the boy. She's going to consume a whole pig too, which is quite surprising. That's part of the discipline as well. They need to learn to conserve energy, which is vital for continuing to fight. The two of them begin eating like savage animals. The trainer instructed the boy to toss the bones on the floor. Someone will come to clean it up later. At least the taste is delightful. The trainer mentioned he needs to eat everything. Waste is unacceptable. Our boy said that would never happen anyway. After finishing the meal, the trainer said she was leaving and instructed our boy to sleep after eating. Now the boy is by himself in his room, which is far better than sleeping outside in the forest with mosquitoes the size of dinosaurs. There he can also use his own phone, so he chose to call his mom. Upon reaching her, he recognized that the matriarch is anxious. In fact, Selma had requested the trainer to be tough on him, but that made her uneasy, and the boy understood his distress was heightened because of it. Yet the matriarch is so worried, she told the boy she could instruct the trainer to be even tougher if she was being too lenient. Since his father just arrived, she has to hang up. But that short conversation played with our poor guy's mind. On the second day, he realized something about the Transformer training. It's about repeating foolish actions and pushing past your limits. There's more science involved in this training. They utilize various electronic devices. The trainer's conclusion after everything is that our protagonist has very poor reflexes, so she instructed him to lift that barbell. Looking at the weights, the boy thinks it must weigh around 45 kilos. Lifting that shouldn't be an issue, because Transformers are incredibly strong. The trainer asked him to follow her for a bit. She instructed the boy to run while holding that weight. And as the saying goes, when it rains, it pours. The poor guy will have to run across a narrow path, practically a tightrope. The trainer said the boy needs to concentrate on maintaining his balance, but he isn't sure if that's even feasible. This wooden plank is far too narrow. Our boy is uncertain if he can manage this and thinks a fall could be perilous. The trainer is aware it's only 3 meters high. A fall like that wouldn't be fatal for the boy, but she strongly advises him to avoid falling. The primary rule for Transformers is to steer clear of injury because they aren't immortals who regenerate automatically. Since our boy understands his unique biology, he chose to run at full speed. Getting hurt isn't a concern for him. Noticing the poor guy's recklessness, the trainer became very concerned. But our protagonist had sharpened his own senses. His balance is impeccable. Since he's also an immortal, his senses are even more acute. That turned out to be very easy for him, almost enjoyable. Not having to walk on knives is a true relief. Arriving on the other side, the boy thought he was finished. But the trainer told him to do it 4 more times. Gustavo continues doing it at the same pace. The trainer is becoming increasingly intrigued. The boy completed it perfectly without losing his balance. Increasing the difficulty, this time he's going to have to walk on a steel cable. Gustavo realized this is actually going to be challenging. Questioning if he really has to do this, the trainer affirmed yes. What he did on the wooden plank, even children manage. She wasn't expecting much from the protagonist, but realized she underestimated the boy. He has excellent senses. She even placed some mattresses to soften the fall, knowing this won't be easy. In case he tumbles, the trainer suggested he attempt to hold onto the cable. At least he doesn't have to carry any weight this time. Even so, still feeling challenged, it's less severe than the Immortals training. However, walking on a steel cable is never a simple endeavor. When taking his first steps, the boy discovered the structure is highly durable and barely bends. There's no breeze to throw him off balance. And if he does fall, it will be onto the mattresses. There's nothing to dread in that scenario. Brimming with bravery, Gustavo chose the simplest option, sprinting across the steel cable. He nearly lost his balance midway, opting to revert to walking with a bit more control. Every step has to be meticulously planned. Keeping his coordination, our boy continues to progress. This left the trainer increasingly fascinated. At last, the training session concluded, and the trainer mentioned they would reconvene next weekend. Gustavo is now in his mother's vehicle. Imagining the boy is inquisitive, she brought along some answers for him. To her, it would be hard to envision her son failing in any aspect of life. It's time for him to learn how to utilize the body he has. He can't remain weak indefinitely. This makes our boy anxious because he is already extraordinarily strong. But since Gustavo's ambition is to enlist in the Marines, a little physical training is not detrimental, and he hopes to join them one day. Dinner that evening was quite plentiful. The matriarch was astonished by the boy's appetite. He devoured food like a beast. Our boy stated he has come to appreciate the meals she prepares over the last few days. He confided to her that he also wishes to learn how to cook, asserting that muscular men who cook attract women. The matriarch agrees on the cooking part, but emphasizes that her son needs to become muscular first. The way he is currently, he appears like a bohemian, the type who lounges in the square playing dominoes. Nonetheless, our boy desires to learn to cook since the Immortals don't seem to prioritize that. While unwinding, Gustavo began contemplating what the next training session would entail, hoping something new has been arranged and less excruciating. One thing he is certain of, regardless of what they do, Gustavo knows it can't get any worse. This protagonist is truly very naive. The poor fellow is already in total free fall. The impact of his body hitting the ground startled even the birds. The farmer mentioned they managed to surpass the basic stage, and it has nothing to do with passing the exam. Everything he has done so far is essentially the fundamentals needed to progress to the next level. After throwing himself off that cliff, the boy had completed his warm-up. Unlike the Transformer training, at least that suffering concludes quickly, and our boy soon stops experiencing pain. However, the farmer is a very strict trainer. Bullets penetrate the body. They can handle that well. But losing parts to a blade is a different matter. Very complicated. If the injury isn't too serious, it's wiser to allow yourself to be cut. More perilous movements must be avoided at all costs. The farmer's face is frightening, almost as if he relishes what he does. Gustavo inquired why he was holding that sword. The farmer questioned the boy because he believed he was clever. It's time for the boy to master dodging swords or absorb the hits with the least harm possible. The unfortunate lad is now fighting for his life, trying to avoid getting struck in the head, while the farmer is fully committed. Even so, he noticed that the boy had grown stronger. He must learn to evade serious injuries. Minor ones are bound to happen anyway. The initial strike with the sword found our boy. It was a painful gash. The farmer advised him to block thigh strikes with his shins or adjust his body so the blade wouldn't penetrate deeply. Essentially, Gustavo is learning the proper method to get cut. His regeneration abilities are truly remarkable. That only spurs the trainer on more. Now he can really take off the gloves. Gustavo understood his time here would not be easy. The poor child's blood is almost becoming fertilizer for the plants. Weakened, he listened as the farmer explained that blood loss is a significant weakness for immortals. Stopping the bleeding is vital. Gustavo was fatigued, so they paused for food he offered to cook that day. Back at the shack, our boy set up his small camping stove. He prepared a lovely pasta dish he learned from his mother. The farmer tried some too. He even acknowledged that the kid had skill. Gustavo was glad the farmer could actually discern good food from bad. But then the farmer clarified his stance. Cooking is also a method of discipline. Learning to ignore unpleasant flavors is a part of the training as well. Back outside, they resumed physical training. The farmer moved swiftly, striking Gustavo in the stomach. The impact of the blow instantly dropped the poor guy's blood pressure. It was time to learn how to regenerate internal organs. Step 1. Apply pressure to stop the bleeding. Internal injuries take a little longer to heal. What truly baffled Gustavo was the speed. He never even saw it coming. The farmer explained he had concealed his energy, making Gustavo's senses ineffective. Our boy instantly wanted to learn that technique. Meanwhile, his wound had finished healing. Noticing his interest, the farmer asked if he wished to learn how to do it. Gustavo didn't hesitate to agree. 2 long days later, our boy was back in that elevator. He was eager to learn more from his strong female instructor. A dark feeling overcame him as someone aimed a gun in his direction. He inquired if they were using rubber rounds. The instructor replied perhaps, then fired a shot just past his head. It was a gas gun equipped with special ammunition. Gustavo's first lesson of the day was learning to evade bullets. Yet the poor fellow was determined. As the shots fired, he dashed around the space. The instructor remarked that bullets are extremely hazardous. Captain Obvious strikes yet again. He needed to seek cover or move quickly and erratically to avoid becoming an easy mark. One of the shots skimmed his arm. The instructor cautioned him against getting hit. It would take him out of the battle. If he had to endure a hit, he should aim to reduce the injury. This level of pain felt just like the Immortals' training. Reflecting on both programs, Gustavo realized something intriguing. Their methods were highly customized to their specific biologies. Neither instructor was teaching him how to combat. The main goal was survival, continually honing his physique. Immortals had to evade blades, which were complex or high-caliber weaponry. Transformers, on the other hand, didn't fear edged weapons. Their bodies were robust enough to withstand them. Shotguns weren't particularly threatening either, due to their poor long-range accuracy and the Transformers' speed. After some time, bullets covered the ground. It was time for a brief rest. The instructor instructed our boy to begin running while carrying weights. It was certainly preferable to being stabbed. Then it was time for him to traverse the steel high wire again. But midway, he sensed an incredibly ominous presence. The fear was so overwhelming that he lost his footing. He attempted to escape but fell to the ground below, completely terrified. Gustavo anxiously scanned his surroundings for the source of that feeling. The instructor, however, remained completely still. She then asked if he had truly been able to sense that. Our protagonist was even more bewildered. The instructor clarified it was wild energy, and she was amazed a novice could perceive it. Gustavo pleaded with her not to do it again. He felt as if his heart was about to burst. Using the energy again, she mentioned he could get accustomed to it once he possessed that energy himself. Now he needed to return to his drills. 2 days later, he stopped falling off the high wire and began responding more effectively to the energy pressure. Having the senses of an immortal greatly assisted him. That's how he was able to withstand the pressure. By managing his core muscles, walking the steel wire became simpler. The trainer observed all of this, impressed by the boy's ability. Gustavo continued to train diligently. The immortal routine felt like a walk through hell. The farmer was already changing the weapons to assist the boy in learning to regenerate his own organs. He was also using traps to ensnare him, which were exceedingly perilous. Extended pain could disrupt cognition, so the boy had to evade it at all costs. Immortals utilize their bodies to engage in combat, almost regarding them as expendable. That's why he needed to master pain management. Excessive pain distorted one's thoughts. Throughout the town, the Transformer training also carried on. Our boy was now moving about with body weights while maintaining his lifting routine. Things were becoming increasingly intense with some minor adjustments. His father had to be away for work for 10 days. Upon his return home, he was warmly greeted by his wife. They were undoubtedly a couple deeply in love. Meanwhile, the farmer ceased stabbing our boy and began instructing Gustavo on how to wield bladed weapons. Firearms were too simple. Martial arts, however, seemed instinctive for Gustavo. The Transformer training may have contributed to that. On the other hand, the muscular trainer taught our boy how to handle firearms. She believed martial arts could be beneficial, but he only required the basics. His physical strength would take care of the rest. Since our boy is a hybrid receiving two forms of training, everything unfolded quite naturally. 2 months had already gone by. Gustavo was enjoying the rhythm, and the old man noticed the boy visited the gym often. He remarked that the lad was indeed very strong, which the matriarch saw as a positive indication. Any compliment in that household was an excuse for the couple to start flirting. It made Gustavo ponder why he was an only child, since his parents certainly put a great deal of effort into that particular endeavor. Inside the bathroom, Gustavo began examining his own reflection. He didn't understand why he didn't have a girlfriend yet. He was young, attractive, and fit. It was time for something to transpire. The matriarch's cell phone began ringing. She was going to meet a young woman's mother. The daughter was in her final year of school, and her mother was anxious. The father was left alone in the living room. He noticed a cell phone lying there. Our boy was searching for the hairdryer, but when he entered the room, he realized no one was present. He sat down to pick up his own phone. There was a test the following day, and our boy needed to take it. His classmates thought it was odd he wasn't heading to college, but that had never been Gustavo's aim. His future was decided 9 years ago when a massive black hole appeared on Earth. The poor kid had been buried under tons of debris. He saw someone rushing toward the invaders. That was the moment the boy resolved that when he grew up, he wanted to be just like that person. This would be distressing for his mother. She hoped for her son to have an ordinary life. Outside, the matriarch went to meet someone. That individual was our protagonist mentor, who inquired what excuse had been given this time. Selma responded that she had gone to visit a neighbor. Now that the two were seated and enjoying a drink, the mentor asked if Selma wasn't curious to learn more about Gustavo's training. Exhibiting a trace of sorrow, Selma remarked she didn't have great expectations. The offspring of a normal human and a transformer typically didn't turn out that strong. She hadn't posed any questions up to now because she presumed the boy was struggling. Meanwhile, the protagonist's father was also on a very significant call. On the other end of the line was the farmer who had vital information to share. He mentioned that the protagonist was an anomaly. Back with the matriarch, she simply wished her son could fend for himself so he wouldn't be abducted and transformed into a laboratory test subject. The mentor was aware these things occurred. They aimed to create a hybrid stronger than all the rest, the so-called anomalies. So far, the attempts had been unsuccessful, always leading to a creature with abilities akin to both races. Eventually, they drew an evident conclusion. Blending supernatural powers with humans consistently weakened the final outcome. The mentor has positive news. She said Selma's son is genuinely remarkable. Back to the old man, he was concerned about Gustavo, believing his son was weaker than usual. But the farmer affirmed the boy is a prodigy. He already taught the young genius how to conceal his own energy. This astonished his father, since that's a challenging skill to master. Back to Selma, the mentor indicated there's something extraordinary about our boy. He already knows how to channel raw energy. This revelation left his mother utterly stunned. Receiving such encouraging news, the boy's parents were skeptical. They thought it was unfeasible. But both mentors emphasized the notion that the boy is unique, a total genius. Naturally, this made his parents joyful. They were very proud of the child born to them. The next day, our boy awoke a bit drowsy and greeted his mother. His father had already left, having departed early for work. The matriarch urged the boy to dig in. Gustavo was taken aback by the plentiful food. It was a lovely breakfast that day. Selma asked if he had forgotten what was happening today. It's the day of the civil service exam. Recalling the farmer's advice, our boy realized it would be challenging. All the training was meant for this day. In no time, our boy consumed everything on the table. His mother asked if he was ready. Gustavo said he studied diligently for the test to the point of dreaming about it. Poor guy. He truly had bad dreams. Concerned, Selma remarked that the old man would be upset if the boy didn't succeed, but it was evident on her face. The matriarch doesn't want her son employed by the government. It would be far better if he didn't pass. Gustavo reassured her not to fret. Although she remains unaware, he is also an immortal. He also recalled previous times. When things went poorly, he had to battle his mother in a boxing match. Selma encouraged the boy by saying he has the potential to succeed. Descending in the elevator, Gustavo enjoyed the distinctive bossa nova playing in that environment. But he quickly remembered he had the senses of an immortal, so he promptly cleared his throat. He was harmonizing with Chico Buarque until the elevator doors opened before him. Outside stood a girl. Our protagonist felt quite embarrassed. That girl seems familiar with Gustavo. She remarked that when she is proposed to, he doesn't need to sing. Gustavo told Helena not to stress over that. The girl wanted to know when he would admit his feelings, but the protagonist replied that she isn't his type. This ultimately led the girl to use a significant portion of her strategic advantage, mobilizing all her forces for an attack. After jeopardizing the border situation on the brink of heightened conflict, Helena declared she is a very attractive and intelligent woman. But these threats had no effect on Gustavo. He calmly exited the elevator, suggesting the girl shouldn't act that way all the time. While strolling down the street, he requested not to be followed by her. Helena was curious about what he intended to do. Gustavo mentioned it was the civil service exam. This left the girl quite astonished. She never envisioned our protagonist would pursue something for the government. Claiming he was occupied, Gustavo attempted to free himself from her. She mentioned she would be attending college soon. She is a year younger but will be going to an all-women's institution since numerous boys are drawn to her. Gustavo urged her to concentrate on her studies. Observing him depart, Helena expressed her desire to date him. But our protagonist disregarded everything, which only made the girl more irritated. Gustavo realized this girl hasn't transformed at all. She remains very headstrong and bold. The bus was now en route to its destination. Gustavo entered a large building. He had arrived early but still needed to find out where to go. Approaching the building's secretaries, he stated he was there for the special exam. A very muscular man in a suit inquired if he was there to take the test. His gaze was menacing, and he attempted to intimidate our boy. It was as if there was considerable doubt in those eyes as he asked to see our protagonist's identification. After reviewing the information, Gustavo proceeded to the elevator. On another floor, a woman requested his documents once again. Only this time she was very courteous and did so easily, telling Gustavo to follow that hallway to the end. At last he reached a door. It's the special exam room. Gustavo wished the place was soundproof since he was certain there would be a lot of bloodshed that day, and the building was situated in the heart of the city, entering a state of alert. Gustavo started to gear up for what might occur when he went through there. He was convinced the exam would be far worse than the training. But to his astonishment, he found an entirely vacant room. Inside was a man who informed Gustavo that he was the first to arrive. This unfortunate fellow was completely bald, and he requested our boy's documents. Baldness had found a remedy in this reality. It's unusual to see a bald individual. This can only imply one thing: he chose to be bald. As he handed over his documents, Gustavo noticed that the individuals in that area appeared very wary. The bald man stated the boy's number was 48 and gestured to where he should sit. None of this resembled the training. Gustavo anticipated an attack at any moment. Thus, he remained in a heightened state of alert, ready for anything that might occur in that space. After a few minutes, the room filled up with candidates. They all carried books and notes. It was at that moment that the protagonist experienced the greatest shock of his life. The bald man finally got up from the table. He assumed everyone was ready and asked if anyone required a pen. Our protagonist began to sweat nervously. He raised his hand discreetly, indicating that he too needed a pen. There were numerous questions hanging in the air of that atmosphere, but our poor boy had no answers. He was certain something was amiss but didn't know who to hold accountable. Evidently, our protagonist's training sessions had been unnecessary torment. Even so, he had done his utmost to prepare in order to pass the test as well. Only a small issue arose. A real test was about to take place in the upcoming minutes. Something had to be wrong, and our boy didn't even possess a pen to take this test. The bald man opted to assist him by giving the boy a pen. It was entirely ordinary, a sign they were about to take a standard theoretical exam. It even resembled school assessments. Our boy felt like a joke. He also observed that everyone present had superb appearances. Some had the potential to become celebrities, but amidst all those extras, someone stood out. Even the citizen's hands were stunning, resembling those of a magazine cover model. The citizen noticed he was being observed but chose to disregard our protagonist. Feeling embarrassed by all this, Gustavo hoped he wasn't seen as a weirdo. A few people entered the room. They were carrying very large panels, placing the protagonist inside a cubicle. All this was part of the preparations for the upcoming exam. One individual ended up arriving late. It was candidate number 50. Nevertheless, this person was accepted. In a conventional exam, they would have been expelled. Reading the initial phrases of the test, Gustavo realized it would be challenging. This wasn't what he had prepared for. Walking on blades is far simpler, but the boy's gaze caught something intriguing. The first question concerned a leg injury and what actions he should take. Despite everything, that was straightforward to answer. The right response is to halt the bleeding. A wound of that size isn't perilous for immortals. He learned this almost entirely in the company of the eccentric farmer. All those inquiries about agricultural knowledge he already had. Since our boy never went into shock from blood loss, the eccentric farmer exploited that with great delight. In case you can't evade a knife, the test wants to determine what should be done. The answer is to shield with one of your arms. Everything seemed quite simple because our boy was exceptionally well prepared. It almost resembles that Indian film where the protagonist answers everything correctly even without knowing how to read. For those curious, the film is titled Slumdog Millionaire. Outstanding, by the way. That examination serves to reveal if candidates understand their immortal bodies, something our boy grasped very well. Discovering the right answers was effortless. He wasn't just training, he was learning too and didn't even notice it. the final question was particularly intriguing. It was about how an immortal can be killed, excluding drowning and being buried. For our boy, the answer was abundantly clear. He had completed the test and wanted to see how much time had elapsed. The bald proctor realized it was far too early. He assumed our protagonist must be giving up. Since an hour still remained, he informed him he could submit the test and exit. Our boy left that room. He encountered the courteous girl who had greeted him earlier, the one with the short hair. She informed him that the information was confidential. That's why she needed to obtain the protagonist's signature. He also mentioned that he's a human hybrid. Remaining quite friendly, the girl wished him good fortune. This made Gustavo very pleased. Demonstrating his inexperience after being treated kindly by the first attractive woman he encountered, he immediately began to think she was interested in him. That night, back in the building, the bald man was evaluating some tests. Our protagonist's exam was genuinely remarkable. The final answer was accurate. Strangulation, freezing, burning, or being pulverized all are exceedingly hazardous for an immortal. The reality is, killing an immortal is challenging and they become desensitized to it over time. That's why they must be educated about hazardous situations. The last question is the most crucial one. It assesses if the candidates understand their own bodies. They can regenerate, but that doesn't imply they're invulnerable to death. They still need to exercise caution, and that half-human in particular displayed a great deal of promise, at least in theory. However, our protagonist doesn't appear to be an immortal. He was the first to show up and the first to depart. He didn't even bring a pencil. 2 weeks later, his phone rang. Gustavo received the news that he had passed the examination, and that wasn't all. He had something to present to his mother. He achieved the highest score. That astonished the matriarch. But showing she is a mother like any other, she was extremely pleased with the news and felt the need to share it with her husband. To celebrate, Gustavo asked if he could eat a lot that day, and his mother consented. The old man soon came home, and our protagonist was thrilled to see him. But the focus was on the food the old man was bringing. Before long, steaks were being cooked, and the small family was celebrating the good news. The old man knew his son would succeed. The matriarch was also pleased with the outcome. Gustavo mentioned the test was much simpler than he had anticipated. That eccentric farmer really understood what he was doing. The interviews would take place soon, a much simpler phase. The matriarch wanted to know which department Gustavo would be joining. The old man said he would likely work for the Ministry of Interior and Security. That made our boy a bit curious. He noticed his dad was attempting to avoid the truth, but his wife didn't seem to notice. Gustavo was trying to picture why the government recruits immortals and what their responsibilities would be. The boy had numerous questions, but he was certain his dad would keep the secret. That evening, he asked the old man for advice, but he refused to reveal anything. Our protagonist was happy about passing, but his joy was fleeting. The second phase of the exam, the interviews, arrived swiftly. His dad didn't disclose any details. He only advised his son to respond honestly because the interview was designed to assess his character. As he left all dressed up for the interview, his mom became slightly anxious, but she said the boy would perform very well. Gustavo expressed his gratitude for her kind words. Inside the elevator, he was contemplating how it would unfold. Checking his own appearance, Gustavo began to believe he could be a star. Helena ended up witnessing this. Our boy was lost in his own reflection. Gustavo couldn't comprehend how they encountered each other so frequently. He even thought he was being followed, but Helena said she was merely going in the same direction. She mentioned she would like to take some classes with him, but Gustavo said he was very occupied. However, she noted that the boy looked very dashing in a suit. Brimming with confidence, our protagonist remarked that he was already aware of that. He was already in the waiting area for the interview. All the candidates appeared to be preparing as if it were a corporate position. Gustavo quickly noticed the guy from before, the incredibly handsome one. Once again, their eyes met and the guy looked away. Gustavo didn't grasp what that signified, but resolved not to sit beside that individual at that moment. Everyone was waiting calmly until number 48 was announced, our protagonist. Gustavo stepped into the interview chamber. The first person he noticed was a redhead with very fair skin. He resembled a candle. That was likely his nickname as well. Beside this unusual guy was the short-haired girl, the one who had been quite amiable. The initial question posed was why he wished to apply. The natural response was because his father forced him, but that wouldn't reflect well. Our young man stated he wanted to explore his own boundaries, and that he also aspires to achieve a personal aspiration, safeguarding this country and the inhabitants of this land. The redhead inquired if our young man was prepared to give himself up for others. Gustavo replied he wasn't certain. It all hinged on the circumstances, since he needed to think clearly before making a sacrifice. The examiner began jotting down notes, which made Gustavo anxious. Numerous questions were posed and Gustavo responded obviously. The girl asked whom he would rescue from drowning if both were in danger, his mother or his girlfriend. Gustavo said he would save both because he's a superb swimmer. If he had one bullet and two targets, Gustavo would shoot one and tackle the other. A genuinely amusing scene to visualize. It caused the friendly girl to smile slightly. A few days later, Gustavo was unwinding while watching videos on his phone. His laughter echoed in the room. The matriarch found it odd that he remained idle all day since that interview. She said he ought to do something, but he soon understood he might get scolded by his mother, which would be dreadful. Gustavo stated he had some events lined up and an activity for that day. Play games, eat, relieve himself, and sleep. That response ignited his mother's wrath. She mentioned the instincts of Transformers are intricate. If they completely take over, dire consequences could arise. There are numerous instances of violence and scenarios that could lead to severe prison sentences. There's even a tale in that region about a boy who yielded to his cravings and kept howling at the moon. It's crucial for Gustavo to learn self-control. However, while watching the news, our young man realized magic users were the primary source of issues. The matriarch stated there exists a method to manage these urges, which is by mastering oneself. That's why they used to hike in the mountains when he first awakened. That's one method to develop self-discipline. That's why she advised the young man to find a girlfriend soon, because that could help as well. If he didn't manage his own instincts, he could take a very perilous action. Quite curiously, she asked if he liked boys, and our protagonist said no. Another month confined in his room was truly concerning. She even inquired if he didn't want to pursue what he initially desired, since the old man suggested he delay starting the new job. Recalling the interview, we learned that the boy had been accepted. Now he would have to undertake a 5-week course. Reading that document, the boy nearly went into shock. The starting salary was $45,000 plus various perks. It was utterly ridiculous, a genuinely captivating offer. Gustavo wished to share it with his parents, but the short-haired secretary understood he only had an immortal father who could create complications in their marriage, and the secretary made that very clear. That's why he couldn't reveal anything to his mother. The protagonist expressed with complete honesty that he aspired to be the top employee at the Ministry of Interior. The matriarch questioned his ambitions since the boy merely stayed in his room all day. However, having that discussion made her feel a bit more at ease. The reality was she felt very relieved about the path the boy's life was taking. If the youth among the Transformers had someone like him, it would be entirely different. Gustavo claimed everything was fine and felt pleased to be a hybrid. In the past, hybrids like him faced significant issues because they couldn't manage their impulses. Our boy was a remarkable exception. He was better off with that set of traits. He could sleep soundly and eat almost anything. The course schedule finally arrived for him. Those who passed were already making their way to this new location. Our protagonist was also waiting to board the bus, prepared to embark on a new chapter of his life. Inside the bus, Gustavo watched the people outside. They looked very hot. That was a clear indication that they were in summer. But inside that bus, the climate was just right. Even the windows were designed to block the heat, and half the seats were vacant. Gustavo hadn't noticed it before, but recognized it when he stepped onto the bus. He could identify who the hybrids were. Aside from their unique appearance, they had distinct auras. It's something the treatment allows him to sense with his intuition. And one of those hybrids is the guy sitting next to him. That attractive dude. Listening to some conversations, our boy realized people were getting to know each other better. It's the first step toward making new friends, which can be quite beneficial. The old man had advised the boy to do this. He mentioned he might be surprised to find that unusual encounters can lead to great friendships, and he's pleased that Gustavo has transitioned into a young adult. It's fortunate the kid can sleep in the city because his father couldn't. Gustavo inquired how it had been for him. The old man replied he suffered from severe insomnia because he could hear everything when he needed to rest. Transformers learn to manage their impulses. This aids in mastering the senses. The old man had to use earplugs. He even purchased a 4-story building just to sleep in the middle of it with walls that were soundproofed. But if the boy can sleep so well, it's because he can control his own senses exceptionally well. Gustavo understood this isn't easy to accomplish, but for him it came very naturally. Since Transformers can easily do this, it's a true advantage. The old man noted that his new colleagues would be quite sensitive, and he must be mindful of that. Recalling this conversation, Gustavo called out to the handsome boy, considering it's already the 3rd time they've encountered each other. Nonetheless, the background character chooses to remain silent. In fact, he behaved poorly, asking the protagonist if they knew each other. They've already exchanged glances a few times. Our protagonist attempts to mention that they had encountered each other previously, but the extra insists this is their initial meeting. Following his father's advice proves to be challenging. Gustavo is already quite annoyed because the princess beside him either has a poor memory or is just a terrible liar. Giving up on her, he chooses to seek someone else, a blonde girl. Our fighter tries to behave courteously, and the first thing the girl remarks is that he must be a hybrid as well. It must be from his father's lineage. The boy likely had a serene upbringing and probably doesn't even realize where they are headed now. After all, he's merely an immature kid. A remark that made our boy even more frustrated. The girl also stated that the protagonist's observation skills are quite lacking. They are all very perceptive. That's why they are seated in the aisle with the curtains drawn. Communicating in that atmosphere is tough, bothersome for all of them. The ones causing too much commotion are the hybrids because they are less perceptive. That's why she told this foolish, ignorant boy to hush. But what Gustavo genuinely desired was to slap this arrogant extra upside the head. It's time to resolve matters through aggression. At least, that's what he wished. The reality is, she isn't incorrect. The old man informed our boy that his nickname had once been Mr. Sensitive even after he mastered his senses. But being sensitive is no justification for being impolite. And after those words, everyone fell quiet. Opening a bag of chips there would make our boy utterly despised. That was when he began to sense something extremely perilous. It's our protagonist's stomach wanting to release some gas. Those pesky gases are eager to escape. But Gustavo doesn't care at all, forget the extras. It's time to give an olfactory gift to the blonde girl who detected our boy's foul scent, a stench that spread thoroughly throughout that bus. Almost about to faint, the blonde girl remarked that the protagonist is indeed very rude, which leaves Gustavo immensely relieved. He succeeded in giving her what he desired, sweet revenge. Hours after the gaseous incident, they finally reached their destination. All the candidates are disembarking with their bags. Gustavo has no idea where they are. It appears to be in the countryside, and someone approached him. It's those loud hybrids who seem to be quite friendly. They inquired what the farter had consumed. Gustavo immediately recognized both of them and said he just needed to let one rip right there. The green-haired guy is named Johan, while the redhead goes by Redhead. I'm not learning another Korean name, that's out of the question. Gustavo mentioned that the redhead is the one who ought to have been the farter since he looks like someone who does that. That comment made his new companions grin. With just a bit of conversation, the redhead realized the protagonist genuinely doesn't understand what's going on. The location they are currently at is a vast training center. A commanding voice instructed everyone to start lining up in groups of 5. It's time to begin moving swiftly. Gustavo noticed there are additional people present. Roughly 100 young individuals. Another strange thing is that after just a little running, everyone is already gasping for air. Our protagonist can hardly believe this is truly occurring. And what is even more peculiar, the one who appears to be an instructor is indeed the bald man from the exam. The candle companion and the pleasant girl are also present. The bald man stated that over the next 30 days they would train these youths, but he is already feeling let down by them. The physical condition of these recruits is appalling. He then commanded them to look back to observe the trees. With a wicked gleam, the bald man wants to identify who the first 15 will be to reach the opposite side. A swarm of extras began moving with great speed. The hybrids, along with the blonde girl and the quiet princess, are among them. Gustavo wasn't even fazed by their pace. Hopping on one foot, he would arrive ahead of everyone else. His aim is to be the 14th to arrive, so as not to attract too much attention right from the start. Recalling previous conversations, Gustavo was advised not to let anyone discover he is a transformer, as this would lead to complications. Ordinary people would regard him with concern, thinking the protagonist is a ticking time bomb, a potential threat to society. Controlling his speed during that race, our boy succeeded in reaching the desired position. To enhance his performance further, he feigned exhaustion, claiming that it was extremely challenging. Truly, these recruits resemble seasoned smokers. The bald man announced that the rest can leave since they do not meet the minimum standards to be present, glaring at them menacingly. For those who remained, it's time to perform some push-ups. Every time they hit the ground, the instructor insisted they must declare they are losers. Gustavo thought that would be amusing, like a corporate training session, but things are becoming quite complicated. Even the kind lady is intimidating, scaring all those recruits who are struggling immensely to complete the push-ups. One boy among them started trembling significantly. He might soil his pants shortly. But the bald man commanded everyone to halt. If it had been in his day, that would have never occurred. These recruits are the worst ever. The bald man instructed that hybrid to pay attention and not yell in there, because he'll burst everyone's eardrums. In that environment, they communicate in a controlled manner, a rule everyone must adhere to. Gustavo recognized that the immortals are all weaklings. The bald man continued, stating that in his time, none of them would have passed. Then he asked if that recruit preferred to leave or face punishment. Filled with determination, the recruit chose the punishment. For the bald man, that's wonderful. Sounds of something shattering echoed for everyone. Our protagonist felt frightened. That sounded like a bone breaking. He needed to take a quick look, so he bent down and peered. Indeed, that unfortunate guy's arm ended up taking the hit. Gustavo watched all of this closely, but for them, being immortals, this isn't the worst that could happen. Presenting the guidelines to everyone, Baldy declared that punishments consist of broken bones. Cursing incurs 2 points. Speaking loudly costs 1 point. Fighting without authorization is worth 5 points. The rest they will learn soon enough. The bald man inquired if the recruit enjoyed that performance. Our protagonist began to feel anxious. Stepping away from the group, the bald instructor reiterated that they are all weak, commanding everyone to rise, stating even those who ranked first are poor as well. The bald instructor's name is Lee. He will take charge of this platoon. The friendly girl mentioned they are going to enhance everyone's physical abilities since regeneration capability is linked to their endurance. Even as newcomers, they should already be able to regenerate effortlessly. To Gustavo, this girl must be the instructor. Her name is Darum. My goodness, what a dreadful name. She'll continue being the kind one and serves as the technical instructor. It was the Candle Guy's opportunity to introduce himself. His name is Kim, and he declared he's going to eliminate all those newbies. Cold remarks from a conceited background character. The nice woman had to interpret for them. The candle instructor is set to inform the students about their body's immortality. Gustavo noticed the crazy farmer had already gotten there first. The bald instructor stated anyone who wishes to leave can do so immediately. He'd genuinely enjoy watching them all leave. Gustavo resolved to remain for the first month. He's certain things will improve later. He just needs to dodge getting shot in the head. Baldy commanded silence. He finally welcomed the recruits by announcing they had entered hell. 10 recruits per dorm. Time to gear up. Gustavo was impressed by the facility. It looked like it came straight out of a bad horror film. Johan was soaked from training and wanted a shower. His presence along with the redheads made Gustavo feel somewhat more at ease, especially since the blonde girl and the quiet princess were also present. Next to our protagonist stood a guy breathing heavily, a truly greasy fellow. Gustavo realized not all immortals are slim. There's another very different guy there, likely a foreigner, and some very pale, unusual twins. There's also a generic girl. Even her black hair appears washed out. They weren't divided by gender. Gustavo wondered where he was meant to change. The blonde cautioned him not to peek. As icy as a chunk of ice, Gustavo responded he had no desire for her. She didn't trust him, however. She was already judging him without even realizing he's a shifter. The pale girl proposed, setting some guidelines for getting along. Gustavo noticed her voice was quite lovely. The quiet princess stated that cleanliness tasks must be performed outside the room. Anyone who violates this rule should be eliminated. The blonde concurred. So did the protagonist's companions who were against our boy. In fact, everyone supported leaving our protagonist isolated in his position. The quiet princess stressed that cleanliness is essential. They couldn't neglect to brush their teeth. Everyone agreed with that suggestion, which made Gustavo extremely uneasy. Like it or not, he's stuck living with these individuals for the next month. He resolved to follow the majority to make his time in this dreadful camp simpler. Recruits are dining now. They've been informed that teams will be numbered from 1 to 10. After the meal, each team needs to select a representative leader. Our boy became nervous about that. The blonde girl believes the quiet princess is the most qualified. Even the dull brothers concur. And the friends of our background character are inclined to agree as well. Gustavo chose to voice his opinion this time. He remarked that the quiet princess isn't very sociable. A good team leader requires many traits, and being approachable is one of them. The blonde girl told him he was mistaken. The only thing that matters is blood quality, and a hybrid's perspective is irrelevant. That girl's arrogance filled Gustavo with fury. He wanted to shove her face in the dirt. Gustavo assumed training would commence right after lunch, but the recruits were given more gear instead, cheap boots and other useless items. Before resting for the day, they had a theory lesson. Now they had to focus on a video. The instructor said they all knew the company. Gustavo was the only one who didn't, so he asked Johan for information. The place is called Hawaii Communications. It's a Korean name. I had to alter it because I just can't handle it anymore. Anyway, this training aims to select the best. It's a government-funded organization. They aren't civil servants, but they work for the state. The instructor asserted that in his day, they wouldn't even be hired if they couldn't walk on knives. Our boy is already tired of hearing this instructor's back-in-my-day story. His advice for recruits who don't want to go insane: do exactly what he instructs. Speaking to someone off-screen, the instructor indicated that's all the recruits need to understand. Then the nice girl appeared in the video. Their aim is to educate the immortals on how to properly utilize their abilities. They must keep this in mind continuously. Now they can all go to rest. After a refreshing shower, Gustavo was eagerly anticipating lying in bed. Finally, he can sleep soundly, but his overly sensitive friends complain excessively, whining that their roommates breathe too loudly. Johan told our protagonist to stop breathing, suggesting he go outside and die quietly. From what he learned from the elder, Gustavo knows it takes 3 years for them to master sleeping properly. With the oldest guy there being only 23, everyone is struggling. Intrigued, Gustavo inquired how his friend manages to sleep. The boy replied that he has a secret weapon. He forces his body to lose consciousness. Since they are immortal, it poses no issue. Gustavo offered to assist him. The boy was doubtful, cautioning that excessive force shouldn't be applied. Once it took him 2 days to awaken, but he mentioned it too late. Our boy was already relieving stress by choking his new roommate, frightening the redhead. Witnessing this, the other guy was left speechless. He suddenly became very curious about this human-shaped sleeping aid. The redhead was next, eager to sleep as well. This ignited the curiosity of the other roommates. When asked who else was interested, several hands shot up throughout the dorm. Our protagonist had a lot of fun that evening. He sent nearly everyone off to Dreamland, but 2 individuals still needed to be sent to the arms of Morpheus. For those unaware, Morpheus is the Greek deity of dreams. The blonde realized our protagonist isn't entirely useless. It was time for Gustavo's payback. He stated he wouldn't assist her. The blonde girl contended that they are roommates, and if he helped her now, the favor would eventually be returned. But Gustavo didn't care about her argument. However, halfway through walking away, he had a clever idea. He decided he would assist the girl with a single strike. He hit the base of her neck with considerable force. Since it was a consensual strike, it purified our protagonist's soul. Only the silent princess was left. Gustavo asked who was next, but the silent princess merely lay back down, ignoring the protagonist. If that is her choice, so be it. Our protagonist needs rest too. Everyone slept peacefully that night, except for one very proud individual. Gustavo realized that bedtime was going to be the happiest part of the day. The bald instructor resumed his duties once more. All the recruits are running and enduring significant hardship. In the nice instructor's class, she is attempting to teach the boys to be more cautious even though they are immortal. The protagonist's combat partner is boasting, claiming he has fought before. He believes he can defeat our boy. He charges furiously, ready to slam him to the ground. But that didn't even intimidate Gustavo. He struck the unfortunate fellow's face with significant force, knocking his partner out cold on the ground, much to the instructor's pleasure. At last it was time to run on knives, a customary training for immortals. The candlehead instructor commanded the recruits to begin running. Many are already frightened, even the protagonist feels anxious. Those blades are only 2 centimeters long, and he's accustomed to running on blades 3 times that length. A week went by and bedtime returned. Gustavo is curious if the silent princess will act elusive today. He enjoys being spurned by that citizen because he knows she doesn't sleep well. But as soon as he entered the dorm, it seemed like everyone was anticipating something to occur. Gustavo inquired of Johan what was happening. The guy mentioned something had taken place the previous night. The team leader was unable to rest. He left the dorm and got into a scuffle with other guys who were also battling insomnia. That's why several recruits were watching them today. Gustavo began hearing footsteps approaching their dorm. The silent princess remarked that's his issue, and she doesn't want anyone to interfere. Outside, some irate recruits showed up. They all began exchanging looks. The leader of those thugs came searching for one particular person, our protagonist. Gustavo instantly identified himself, wondering what this citizen wanted from him. While glaring at each other, Gustavo asked what this background character sought. Initially, he couldn't even find the right words. Quite mortified, the extra said he would also like to enjoy a peaceful night's sleep with him. That totally took our boy by surprise. Without a moment's hesitation, Gustavo declared he prefers women. The background character had to quickly clarify he simply wanted to sleep soundly too. He felt as though he was perishing. His squad mates couldn't rest either, and they were desperate for assistance. Outside, Gustavo asked how the recruit was aware of it. The guy stated rumors circulate quickly, and just so he knew, Johan was a huge gossip. He was the one who made that joke too, telling the extra he needed to express his desire to sleep with the protagonist. That clarified a lot. When asked if it was difficult, Gustavo replied that it didn't take long. That evening, he assisted everyone on Team 1 in falling into a deep slumber. The next morning, their team leader, the tattooed extra, appeared very amiable toward our protagonist. He commended Gustavo's dexterity, saying it helped him sleep remarkably well. Gustavo cautioned him that phrasing it that way might lead to misunderstandings. During training that day, everyone continued to struggle under the burden of the bald instructor. But then the instructor noticed something odd, an overweight immortal. In the past, that would have been intolerable. Our protagonist observed the chubby recruit was having difficulty. The poor soul had to halt mid-run to throw up a bit. Gustavo asked if he was all right. The chubby guy urged our boy to keep going. He appeared to have surrendered, saying he couldn't finish the race. Gustavo helped him off the ground. He told him that if he was going to give up, he shouldn't have even started. He vowed to assist him. They were going to cross the finish line together. Now back to running, Gustavo aimed to encourage the overweight recruits so he wouldn't halt again. The bald instructor observed what was occurring and mockingly jeered at them, asking if they were a couple. When they finally reached the end, the instructor informed them that time was up. He was deducting 5 points from each of them. The chubby recruit was anxious. He understood what the penalty implied. But our protagonist reassured him it was all right. It didn't matter to him. Still, the other guy remained quite nervous. He inquired why the protagonist had done it. Gustavo viewed it as a foolish question. He didn't require a reason for his actions. Camaraderie was essential to him. Without it, he was merely a moving entity. Gustavo recalled being rescued when he was young. That person hadn't needed a reason either. In the locker room, Johan asked if our boy intended to assist the quiet princess since he was struggling to sleep. Gustavo stated that Jerk always turned down help. Johan commented that they were both truly remarkable, but our protagonist noticed something about the redhead boy. Lowering his voice to Johan, he asked what had transpired. Apparently, it was something at the convenience store earlier that day. The blonde girl's wallet had dropped on the floor, and he found out her name was Miho Wu. The redhead went to return it, remarking how amusing it was that he hadn't learned her name until now. But his courtesy was harshly rejected. The blonde girl showed no interest. That was why the redhead was looking so dejected. Gustavo told him he didn't need to act like that. But the truth was, the poor guy was utterly smitten, which made our protagonist admire him even more. As they walked back to the dorms, they continued discussing the girl, and Gustavo asked what his friend knew about her. As they neared the barracks, our protagonist spotted something intriguing. Several recruits were gathered in the hallway. They were all seeking the protagonist, the bus farter who could help them sleep well. They had come to request his assistance because they needed rest too. Gustavo and the redhead knew precisely who was responsible for this. Johann, the notorious gossip. Trying to defend himself, the gossip insisted he had merely been complimenting the protagonist's skills. But with so many recruits present, Gustavo wondered how he was going to help them all sleep. It would require at least an hour to sort this out. Our boy's nights had just become extremely busy. It was also his turn to help a girl sleep. As usual, Gustavo instructed her to envision him in her dreams. The girl questioned if that was truly essential. Gustavo suggested she dream of an attractive guy instead, and shortly after that, he lured her into slumber. At last, he could head back to his own room. There was someone there who piqued his interest greatly, the quiet princess. After several days, utterly fatigued and drained, he still persistently turned down the protagonist. Gustavo had executed that tactic so many times he had become proficient. Now he had the recruits approach him to simplify his work. The instructors remained uninvolved as well. If the recruits were resting well, it was because the protagonist was aiding them. He had transformed into a sensation, the sleep inducer, the neck slasher, the Sandman himself, until one nickname reached him, Neckboy. Our boy wasn't too pleased about that one. Nevertheless, he was treated with great courtesy by all the other recruits. The troublemaking redhead, the hairy fellow who was the first to ask for assistance, often offered him sweets. At least that stage of training was nearing its conclusion. The creatures appearing on Earth are referred to as invaders. It had been 2 decades since their initial emergence, and the bald instructor was enlightening the recruits about it. They categorized the monsters using numerals. Beginning with number 1, the higher the number, the later the creature's initial emergence was. Each student's tablet displayed images of these beings, the most common ones. They had the power to eliminate immortals. Certain invaders had to be evaded at all costs, and those possessed names. He introduced the Blue Knight. Upon its first appearance, it overpowered 500 armed individuals. As the lesson progressed, our boy contemplated what he had absorbed thus far. That organization existed to combat the invaders. The world might be somewhat safer now, but the dread of the portals remained genuine. A defense agency was essential. That was why Hawaii Communications was established. That clarified the substantial salary. Understanding the truth made our protagonist even more eager. He didn't need to become a Marine. He was something greater than that. Now he just needed to discover why his father wanted him to pursue this path as well, since it was such a perilous profession. That segment of their course turned out to be a bit more theoretical. They were studying useful artifacts. The kind instructor demonstrated them that carried blood so they wouldn't faint. Another similar device enhanced their senses and boosted physical abilities. Gustavo began to take an interest in this aspect of the class. The instructor cautioned them to exercise caution as it could be habit-forming, leading to lifelong side effects. Considering the multitude of substances she showcased, Gustavo realized there must be numerous addicts among the immortals. In Candlehead's class, they continued their guidance. Gradually, Gustavo started to sway his peers who were also assisting those struggling. Some began to fall asleep independently and didn't require the protagonist's assistance any longer. The training regimen was proceeding smoothly now, and the plump recruit no longer needed help. The conclusion of training came. No one had been able to get expelled despite the penalties. With a grin on his face, the bald instructor praised them all. They were now staff members of Hawaii Communications. The recruits rejoiced. This was truly great news. It was Instructor Candle's moment to reveal the results that would determine which department the recruits would join. The top 3 would also earn a bonus. If it was cash, our boy was prepared to take it. It was time to reveal the 3rd place winner. Gustavo was becoming quite anxious. The position went to an unknown background character. Even our protagonist had no idea who he was. The bald instructor mentioned this citizens department would be selected carefully, but made it clear he wanted to enter security, and the instructor said they would decide that shortly. It was time to announce the 2nd place. It was the Quiet Princess. Several recruits had already anticipated this, as it was in that person's lineage. Gustavo observed closely as he still didn't comprehend what that signified. He recalled a discussion he had with his friends. Johann was astonished that our boy didn't know so many details. The Silent Princess hailed from a very traditional pure-blood family. Gustavo assumed he was a noble. The redhead clarified there were various lineages. The pure ones tended to be much better with superior traits, and the Silent Princess came from a family with one of the purest bloodlines in the entire area. Regardless, Gustavo respected that citizens' resolve. Even if he was a complete jerk, he was capable. Oh my goodness. Look at what's unfolding. If the silent princess was in second, the redhead began to speculate he might be in first place. Gustavo and Johann felt pity for him. Their friend was truly out of touch. The winner of first place was about to be revealed. Gustavo wasn't even shocked by how it was going to turn out. Against all predictions, first place went to the blonde girl. Gustavo doesn't like that girl at all. She makes absolutely no effort to be kind to anyone. But he must concede she's incredibly clever. She devised a strategy to optimize her points. Essentially, she wouldn't lift a finger to assist her teammates unless there was something in it for her. That's precisely why Gustavo can't stand her. Gazing at those three, Gustavo began to wonder, would he encounter them in the future? But then he recalled he has no idea who that third background character even is. All recruits have plenty of time off until 2 p.m. the following day. Gustavo proposed they host a party. While they were conversing, one of the instructors called out to our boy, asking to speak with him later. His teammates grew curious about that. Another instructor came up to him and handed him a personal contact number. This only made our boy's friends even more curious, eager to know the reason for this. To Gustavo, it's clear. These instructors are looking to recruit him for their own teams. The training wasn't merely to shape them, but to highlight their skills as well. The mischievous redhead is now thanking Gustavo. Thanks to him, he was able to sleep soundly. A charming girl swapped phone numbers with him, suggesting they should hang out sometime. Several background characters became colleagues, holding our protagonist in high regard. This was something Gustavo certainly wasn't expecting. Seeing those results, our boy realized the training had been an incredible success. Back at the dorms, Johann inquired why he took so long. Gustavo remarked that he's quite popular and had to sign a few autographs along the way. While all the recruits were unwinding, someone called for their attention. A man in a suit walked into the room. Gustavo realized everyone was distracted, but he was astonished that no one noticed this man advancing. It's a sign that he had concealed his own presence. The suited man was clearing the way for an even more significant individual. Someone who heard that this year's recruits are talented. That old man's name is, for heaven's sake, another ridiculous name. I'm calling him Mufasa. He is the CEO of this corporation. Recognizing he's an influential person, the recruits salute him. Our protagonist read up on Mufasa. He's a seasoned soldier, one of the immortals from the first generation, and among the 10 most formidable. He asked if the recruits enjoyed the training. Upon hearing their affirmative reply, he said they were lying. Nobody enjoys that sort of thing. Cutting your own body just to allow it to regenerate is insane, but that training could save their lives one day. Mufasa stated this from personal experience. He summoned the quiet princess, who stood up right away. Mufasa commended the girl's efforts. He also called for the blonde girl, who had also stood up. He expressed that he has high hopes for her, but our boy is curious about what he's doing in that dorm. Maybe a CEO isn't a particularly busy person? Then he ended up calling for our protagonist, who definitely didn't see that coming. Mufasa knows he's a hybrid. Even knowing that, he said the boy performed quite well. He inquired about the boy's age and whether he has a girlfriend, as if he were interested in the young man. He mentioned he'd see him at work soon. As a parting gesture, he said he would provide gifts for all of them. Johann was astonished by the attention Gustavo received. He asked if they were related, but our boy claimed it was the first time he'd seen that old man. They considered the chance that Mufasa has a fondness for boys, but some know he has a daughter. After dropping off the gift in the dorm, the instructor mentioned they were fortunate and should use it wisely. It appears to be alcohol. The ginger-haired boy attempted to approach the blonde girl, but was instantly overlooked. Gustavo and Johann admire that citizen's bravery. He keeps experiencing harsh rejections. Without wasting a moment, the plump kid went to investigate what it was since his stomach was intrigued. He found out it isn't alcohol. It's a mixture of substances that people enjoy because it aids with sleep. That container holds 10 bottles, one for each of them. The individual price is 3,000 Korean won. Someone seems to have tossed their can on the ground, attracting everyone's notice. The can was already devoid of contents. The quiet princess consumed everything inside. The first thing she did was glare at our protagonist and curse at him. He ended up feeling quite humiliated by that. Before long, the silent princess was in a deep slumber, a sign that little can is indeed potent. Our boy and his pals began chatting casually. Then the blonde girl approached him. She expressed her gratitude for all he did during that time. Gustavo barely reacted, but what was truly remarkable is that the girl slipped a note into his hand indicating it was solely for him, which left the redhead feeling envious. Feeling like a soap opera heartthrob, Gustavo relished the moment since he had stated the redhead has no chances. Apparently, the redhead doesn't possess a mirror at home. Johann remarked that both of their companions are dreadful. That note serves as a warning. The blonde girl mentioned the CEO typically seeks out talent. This can either fast-track success or transform his life into a nightmare. Therefore, she advised the boy to be wary. Gustavo became intrigued by that information. He wanted to know how the blonde girl obtained it. It appears she knows much more than she discloses. Gustavo informed his friend that the message was nothing remarkable, but he couldn't reveal it to him. After consuming the potion, everyone was fully unconscious. Finally, their first day of work had arrived. Gustavo went to external security team number 3. A man was already waiting for him. Our protagonist suspected it might be the team leader. As soon as another person noticed him, he heard the citizen's disappointment, an extra with visibly fatigued eyes. Responding to the phone, he asked if this was a joke because he received a novice in his division. He had requested someone with experience, someone with a few years in the field. Another individual present told our boy to take a seat, a woman with red hair. Talking with the team leader, she wanted to know what they should do, but no one there had answers for her. Given that, she determined she would train Gustavo, who was also very uncomfortable with this circumstance. Calling for him, she stated she was going to outline the poor guy's responsibilities. She presented him a list of every employee in that company. He must memorize all the names by the following day and destroy the material afterward. She also indicated the desk where he should be seated. One phone is for security calls and the other is for regular calls. After providing a few more instructions, Gustavo mentioned he comprehended everything. Having been shown around the office, the woman with red hair stated she's returning to her investigation. Our boy commenced his corporate duties, which seemed rather dull. By the end of that day, he had to down a few bottles of strong liquor. In the company of his buddies, he expressed that he has some inquiries to make. He inquired about what their supervisors are like. To his astonishment, he found out they are pretty cool. Since Johan is a major gossip, he's already brimming with information. Mufasa intervened directly in the protagonist division. An external security team number 3 is quite unique, connected to headquarters operating with dispatches. It appears to be a very challenging job and everyone there is exceptionally skilled. They also have a particular reputation as being a graveyard for employees in their first year. The team leader is nicknamed the Blender, which describes what he does to rookies. They are also highly sought after by other divisions, since they are so proficient. Now, regarding the red-haired woman, a superhuman created through drug experiments. In an effort to understand more about those abilities, humans succeeded in developing drugs that provide powers. It's the outcome of extensive experiments conducted by the government, but no one can clarify how it occurs or how many individuals were tested. She is referred to as the Knife because she cuts rookies without any compassion. Coincidentally, that enigmatic woman is attentively listening to the conversation. She's catching the part where our protagonist mentioned they seem like the Avengers because of their nicknames. That was when Gustavo's friends grasped the enormous risk they were taking. Only at that moment did our boy feel chills. Because the red-haired woman had instructed him to memorize all those names, not to learn everyone's personal stories. After that reprimand, she simply walked away. The waiter felt so sorry for our protagonist that he offered him a free portion of food. Looking at those peanuts, Gustavo came to a clear conclusion: he is in trouble. Attempting to alleviate his stress, he recalled he should have a bit more fun at work by imagining an ideal world. That was when the phone rang once again. Our protagonist introduced himself. But since he mispronounced the other person's name, he was promptly corrected by the red-haired woman. The man with bags under his eyes and the team leader now consider the rookie to be foolish. He's essentially just a secretary there. But in his spare time, he learns about other divisions, especially since he gained popularity with the nickname Little Neck. The team leader is named Lee, and he's pure blood. He isn't biased against hybrids, though. He's just a little rough around the edges. He's also exceptional in combat, one of the best in the entire company. When it comes to unarmed combat, no one can surpass him. He also has a penchant for swearing quite a bit. Next is Panda, the guy with the dark circles. He's a hybrid as well. He can't fight or shoot, but he's a genius in his area. Aware of his limitations, he focused on strategy. Our main character doesn't know where this guy keeps his intellect, but he does know Panda truly enjoys cartoons. Lastly, there's Citizen Kim. One of the rare humans there, she underwent elite training. She's the highest performing human and one of the most remarkable individuals in the organization. She is as cold as ice, displaying absolutely no feelings, only the finest work in external security. Gustavo realizes these individuals must be amazing, even if their personalities are total garbage. It's been a week since he commenced working. Our protagonist team headed to the camera room. It seems they have matters to address. Our guy introduced himself to that other division. Bad Eyes noticed people were absent and found out they were out in the field completing a task. It appears a test session is in progress and the test subject this time is the Silent Princess. That's a gravity machine created with portal technology. Bad Guys mentioned he already knows that, but the additional info is for our protagonist's benefit. Inside there, they can replicate gravity 9 times stronger than Earth's. They instruct newcomers to perform some exercises, run a bit, do push-ups. Everyone has to participate, but Bad Eyes doesn't seem to need to. The guy with glasses said their rookie can manage 5 times gravity. As they increased the force, the poor thing began to struggle a little. Gustavo had to stifle a laugh. The redhead noticed immediately and asked if he found it amusing. The gravity grew so intense, the poor guy lost consciousness. Time to turn off the machine. Bad Guys advised our protagonist to maintain that grin on his face. But the suited man in the room noted our protagonist should have joined their squad. It's finally time to evaluate our little monster. Now that they're by themselves they asked if they were being too tough on him. The suited guy remarked that fieldwork is quite perilous. Kim stated she prefers a compliant dog over deadweight. To the bad guys, the rookie doesn't understand why they're behaving this way and he might end up feeling bitter. But to remain on that team, he needs to outperform the others. Making him quit now would be better for everyone because he might develop a sadism suited to immortals, where they lose feeling in their bodies and become extremely dangerous and uncontrollable. If he fails this evaluation, Lee will assign our boy to a safer division appropriate for hybrids like him. Lee has no idea why Mufasa placed this kid on the team anyway. Then the test administrator remarked that the kid is impressive. They're already at gravity level 4. Astonishing everyone, our boy is enduring it all. But for Lee, this guy is merely average. They require someone with genuine potential. That's when he noticed the protagonist hadn't slowed down yet. The machine operator confirmed it. Our boy is still moving normally. Gravity kept escalating up to an 8 times multiplier. That left the protagonist's entire team utterly speechless. The operator inquired if they should continue as gravity was already at 10 times. That made Lee swallow his words. He's confronting something genuinely remarkable. Within that apparatus, Gustavo continues to advance. He recalls how they've been treating him so far, being entirely dismissed, reprimanded for everything. It's time for him to demonstrate he's not just some ordinary guy, even if he doesn't fully understand what this team does. Sensing the gravity intensifying, Gustavo wonders what level it's reached now. It should be crushing for any immortal. That's why the quiet princess fainted. If it had been the protagonist's companions, they would have lost consciousness in moments. Now he's uncertain about how long he must maintain this. He merely wanted to be a bit better than the other guy, but he abandoned that notion. He's going to reveal everything he can do. To check if he's attentive, they quizzed him on what 8 times 9 is. That didn't happen with the silent princess, and our boy answered correctly. Since the kid's file indicates he's intelligent, Lee instructed to increase the multiplication challenge by asking what 12 times 22 is. Once more, the boy responds correctly. Kim imagines the boy is in a dazed state. Villains claim drugs can enhance the mind, but they are quite costly. Lee assured they would assess our boy later to determine if he used anything. The issue is, if the results come back negative, Lee is unsure of what to do next. The experiment eventually concluded. Gustavo actually came to enjoy it. He feels his body much lighter. Even if it was just for a few moments, he sensed he had grown stronger. As a hybrid of 2 supernatural entities, experiencing something like this is very easy for him. Finally, the boy exits outside. Kim congratulated him, being considerably nicer than usual. It was so abrupt that Gustavo was rendered speechless. Lee inquired what our boy is staring at. If he's idle, he needs to return to work now. Recognizing our protagonist is extraordinary, Lee wishes to review all the rookie records. This began to unsettle Gustavo. He simply aimed to be a bit better than the silent princess. Princess. Before departing, the machine operator called out to our boy. He stated he's the one in charge of operating that equipment. He mentioned our boy is welcome to stop by when he's off duty. But Lee is already noticeably annoyed. He wants to examine the rookie information. Our boy now feels much more assured because that employee was kind to him and Lee even wanted to check everyone's information. It's a great opportunity for him to showcase what he's capable of. On the way to the room, Kim expressed she hadn't liked our boy's tone when he introduced himself. This isn't a holiday trip, he's working. That's when Gustavo realized little had changed. Kim instructed him to maintain the pace, but our boy interpreted that as encouragement. He's aspiring to gain the admiration of his new coworkers. The bad guy indicated they need to rush. It's time to resume work. A number of books were positioned in front of our boy. He must memorize everything. Once again, Gustavo realized little had altered. Per Bad Eyes, there's information on invaders, the potion mixtures they utilize, and schematics of the machines there too. It is essential for the rookie to memorize everything. Gustavo believed he would need several months, but he was only given 4 days. Clearly distressed, Gustavo inquired what the benefit of memorizing all that was. That's when Lee entered the room. He noticed our boy was reluctant to undertake that task. He must know that information if he doesn't want to be digested in an invader's belly. Knowing which potions to use could also preserve his life. If he doesn't understand the machines there, he won't be able to operate them. That's also crucial. Nevertheless, 4 days isn't a lot of time. But the woman claimed she only needed 3. Panda required just 1 and the boss took 2 days. After 4 days, they'll evaluate our boy. For each mistake he makes, they'll send him to the training facility for an hour. Lee asked if the boy wants to give up, but our protagonist remained silent. He simply stated he would carry out the task. Everyone is beginning to form expectations about him. Meanwhile, the gravity machine operator keeps working. It seems he discovered something particularly interesting. When he spoke to Lee, he had to repeat 12 times that guy is number 1. Lee had to admit that the rookie truly has a formidable physique. Even the machine operator was fascinated. That hybrid might be an exceptionally unique type. Immortals don't typically have bodies that robust. If Lee wanted to expel the kid, they'd take him. But the impolite jerk rejected the offer. Now that operator is curious if Lee will personally train our boy. It sounds like someone turned on a blender. The probationary period decides if new employees are suitable for service. It also acclimates them to new duties. Our boy still has much to learn. Kim inquired about the material used for bulletproof and blade-proof gear. Gustavo mentioned it's a special fiber crafted from leather and Kevlar. Lee remarked that response was too brief. Our boy added that the material is tougher than diamond, absorbs shock, and shields against both extreme heat and cold. The team leader asked about number 64. That made our protagonist a bit anxious. He wasn't sure what it was. After considering it for a moment, he understood it was the Knight of the Wheel. Lee inquired if he was certain. It was merely a guess, but our boy had to take the chance. Lee told the idiot he had just got it wrong. He referred to him as an incompetent little piece of trash and mentioned he shouldn't be so sure when spewing such nonsense. It was simply a test. They posed 10 questions to him each day. Our boy gets 3 incorrect daily. Now he's pondering what to focus on training first. Our boy started working on building strength and ran into the kind female instructor. She recognizes that the poor guy has been training hard recently. He mentioned he gives his all in everything. He couldn't disclose it was actually punishment for answering incorrectly. At the pain endurance facility, he's accompanied by instructor Candlehead. Gustavo went there to learn as well. The instructor is impressed that the boy is still alive. In other training areas, Gustavo performs very well. His sensory control is exceptional. Even battling holograms isn't challenging. Once more, he returned to the gravity machine. Gustavo mentioned he felt a little stiff. The machine operator noticed that the boy was treating this very earnestly. Upon returning to his room, Gustavo spotted something intriguing. There was a folder on his desk, and the panda was gazing at him with great satisfaction. Gustavo needs to return to studying and memorizing additional information. When he arrived home, our boy appeared visibly exhausted. His mother had already made dinner, but his father wasn't home. He was away on a business trip. It's been a month since Gustavo last saw him, and our boy had many questions about his job, but he couldn't discuss anything classified. It was company policy. He was often subjected to lie detector examinations, so our boy opted to talk to his mom about work scenarios instead. He mentioned he's been assigned very challenging tasks. The matriarch wanted to know if he was being taken advantage of. Gustavo replied it wasn't like that, but everything was laborious and filled with responsibility. The matriarch told him they only do that with reliable individuals, but if he found it too challenging, he should consider changing jobs. Poor Gustavo instantly regretted confiding in her. The matriarch asked if he was in it for the money. Our boy replied there were other appealing aspects too. It was the route that would bring him closest to his personal aspirations. That's why he won't give up just yet. The following day, he was back to being assessed and continued his rigorous training regimen. 2 weeks went by. Our boy had already managed to memorize everything essential to the point where he had nothing left to accomplish there. So he returned to studying those manuals. This company has 4 main divisions. External security is in charge of dispatches. They manage emergency responses like in the event of a black hole. They also address terrorist incidents, although Security Team 2 typically handles that. They also provide support when other teams require it. Most teams are made up of pure individuals, but that specific team includes 1 human woman and 2 hybrids. Sitting in his office chair, Gustavo pondered if life would always maintain this pace while deciding what was best to focus on next. As he walked down the corridor, our boy heard a familiar voice. It was his boss and the blonde girl. Lee instantly recognized the intern. In fact, he affectionately calls our protagonist a jerk. Asking several questions, he was curious if our protagonist was a jerk in school. After hearing what the other recruits said about him, Lee had some doubts. But Gustavo assured him he wasn't a jerk in school. Lee asked why not. Our boy replied he did the opposite. He managed the jerks so they wouldn't disturb anyone else. As their discussion continued, other extras in the area began to take notice. The two appeared to be gazing intensely at one another. Lee realized the protagonist used to be the school leader who controlled everyone. He also wanted to know if he had ever been in a fight because it was time for them to practice a bit. Everyone in the vicinity, without exception, was taken aback by this invitation. Since our dear protagonist was already somewhat stressed, he didn't hesitate. He accepted that enticing invitation. Lee wanted to confirm if the protagonist had truly agreed, flashing a very mischievous smile. Looking at the workers on that floor, he remarked that none of them were occupied and they would need an audience. The blonde girl thinks the protagonist is a complete fool. Lee said he'd meet our boy in the ring after lunch and suggested the boy stop eating now. He also asked the blonde girl to assist the protagonist. She claimed it was a waste of time, but he mentioned he's one of the individuals assessing her after her probation period, so the blonde girl consented to help. Our protagonist couldn't believe what was unfolding, receiving assistance from this girl. Lee informed him he couldn't back out now. Gustavo assured him that wasn't an option. It was 5 minutes to 3 in the afternoon. The blonde girl wondered why our protagonist agreed to this and why he irritates that man. Gustavo stated he's just doing his job, he follows orders. The blonde girl inquired if he genuinely wanted to go through with the fight. Gustavo is sure his boss would relish the chance to give him a beating. To the blonde girl, our protagonist is merely stressed. The truth is, Gustavo aims to use this opportunity to test himself as well. That man is recognized as the strongest in the company. Gathered in the ring, Lee asked if the boy wasn't going to warm up. Gustavo replied he already had. Outside the ring, Kim told the newbie to try not to get hurt, while the blonde girl advised the protagonist to do his best to survive. Now that the match had begun, Lee instructed the protagonist to strike first, so our boy started to concentrate. Moving quickly toward his opponent, Gustavo resolved to take it slow at the start. His initial punches couldn't connect with the man who dodged effortlessly. Lee remarked that at this rate he'd never get hit. This only made Gustavo even more determined. He was convinced he just needed to land one solid hit. He chose to leave one side exposed to tempt his target. Lee began to move right away. He fell for Gustavo's trap, who was already poised to counter. There was a tremendous impact and bones were shattered. Gustavo had just been struck, his arm utterly twisted. He couldn't comprehend how he had been hit. His head was spinning. It had been ages since he felt this way, with everything swirling, unsure of where the ground was. The first time this occurred was during training with his mom. She had very heavy hands. She told the boy to get himself together quickly, because the action was just beginning. Our poor guy was only 15 back then, and he got punished for talking back to her. This was the first time he was being beaten by someone other than his mother. Lee asked if the newbie was behaving better now. The fun was over. Gustavo didn't understand why he was the only one injured. They had both traded blows, except our fighter's arm had been seized and broken right after. That created an opening for a brutal elbow strike to land. It was a clean, lightning-fast hit. Even if he healed his arm now, Gustavo wasn't sure if he could strike that guy. Lee queried if he had bruised the kid's pride. It appeared that newcomers were very proud these days. Gustavo let out a deep sigh. This was a clash between an immortal and a shapeshifter. He thought triumph would come easily, but he had been quite arrogant to believe that. Our boy prepared himself for combat once again. His mind was set right now, and he maintained the offensive. Lee seemed excited about the kid's determination. It was time to inflict a little violence. The spectators were watching with keen interest. Our boy unleashed an unrelenting flurry of strikes. Some individuals recognized he was skilled, but Lee was going easy on the rookie. Dodging those strikes took almost no effort from him. Gustavo understood this was a psychological battle. He needed to remain calm and focused. Lee asked why the kid was even in this organization. Was it for the cash? Gustavo disregarded the remarks. He had to keep his concentration. Lee commented that the boy was pathetic. Then he mysteriously disappeared right before him. Gustavo realized his adversary was concealing his energy. He needed to sharpen his concentration at once, or something perilous was about to unfold. Thanks to that, our boy evaded a catastrophic strike. This left Lee quite impressed. Afterwards, Gustavo needed to create some space. At that pace, he couldn't draw near. He didn't comprehend how Lee could be quicker than he was. As a transformer, he ought to be stronger. That's when our boy understood that rules sometimes have exceptions. Our protagonist had only grasped the fundamentals. Standing before him was an immortal with years of experience. Lee genuinely possessed remarkable techniques, but our protagonist was proud as well. He aimed to give everything he had to secure a victory. Lee still wished to know why the boy was there. Did he aspire to be a hero? After seizing Gustavo's arm, he asked if he sought to attract women. If that was his aim, he should become a star. This truly vexed Gustavo. He just wanted to silence Lee with his fists. The boy's ambition was to pursue what he loved most in life and become who he had always envisioned being. Lee vanished again, moving even quicker, faster. Something just grazed our boy's face. He needed space immediately. But instead of retreating, he succeeded in seizing Lee's body with both hands. It was Gustavo's chance to pose questions. He inquired why this whiner was even part of the company. Lee replied that he was the one asking questions here. But our boy clutched tighter, fracturing some of the poor guy's ribs. This merely made Lee more annoyed. That was Gustavo's strength. He truly was more powerful. He resolved to crush this old man right away. Before he could apply further pressure, something strange occurred, capturing everyone's attention. Then Gustavo collapsed to the floor while Lee observed closely. One extra was astonished that Lee had to use that technique on a rookie. He stated if it were him instead of the protagonist, he would have been reduced to ground meat. Another guy realized that this year's rookies were brimming with potential. That fight is a Team 3 tradition. They consistently indoctrinate newcomers to shatter their egos. Lee ended up breaking one arm and several ribs. He instructed to take the protagonist to the infirmary as he'd be unconscious for a few more hours. The blonde girl stated she would handle it, but she only volunteered due to the probationary assessment. Kim, being quite inquisitive, wanted to learn the team leader's judgment. Lee was aware our boy had evaded the surprise attack when he struck his energy. He also demonstrated he possessed a great deal of determination, more than anyone Lee had observed before. That was truly very fascinating. The ability Lee intended to use on him was sensory disorientation. Lost in contemplation, Lee didn't catch Kim asking the question again. All the extras were also awaiting his response. Lee remarked that the kid was a major jerk. He had taken the opportunity to attempt to strike a superior. It was time to escort him to the infirmary, and everyone else needed to resume their tasks. Others in the protagonist's position hadn't been able to touch a hair on Lee's head. The team leader had to utilize very sophisticated techniques to prevail. The team leader, who is quite eccentric, now believes the protagonist is indeed an amazing guy. In another room, our protagonist's companions were working diligently, and they were extremely fatigued. Johann couldn't even keep his eyes open. The protagonist entered the room too, catching the redhead boy off guard. Our boy sat down in utter silence. No one appeared to understand why he was behaving like that, but Gustavo was noticeably disheartened. Before heading there, he had gone to speak with Lee to demand clarifications. Gustavo wanted to know how he had lost his senses and how his superior had accomplished that. Lee appreciated the boy's enthusiasm for learning the move, but our guy said he was merely asking a question. Lee informed him he truly enjoyed winning. Gustavo decided to turn away from him and pursue his own path since that jerk wasn't going to reveal anything. Lee remarked this wasn't school. He wouldn't receive all the answers he desired just because he posed a question. He told the boy to find a way to figure it out and write a report. It required details on why he had failed, and he had to do it on his own. If he sought answers from someone else, he might as well give up now. And if he thought none of it made sense, he should quit then too. Gustavo needed to act quickly and determine what he wanted to do with his life. One of the rookies was presenting what the analysis team did, but our boy was solely focused on his defeat and how that man was vastly stronger than him. He couldn't comprehend how he had been struck. It almost seemed like Lee had a concealed weapon. The conversation they'd shared was even more daunting. Gustavo needed to learn to defend for himself soon. Back at the lecture, the presenter was discussing Project Oracle. It was a system capable of forecasting the future. That was how the analysis team originated. The blonde girl had a query. She heard that psychics used to exist, and the speaker confirmed that it was indeed true. The future is a dynamic force perpetually in motion. The blonde girl remarked that foreseeing such a flexible future only offered illusory hope, and indeed that is the reason Project Oracle was created, but it did not fulfill its objective. The speaker stated that the cause was quite straightforward: the human mind was at fault. A person's beliefs are never entirely accurate. Partial truths exist for everyone, and they ultimately mislead individuals. Assuming something is true isn't necessarily evidence of that truth. This leads people into mistakes. Our protagonist appeared to have a realization. Recalling the farmer's words, concealing one's own energy also involves muddling others' perceptions. Immortals are extremely perceptive and can intercept certain signals before they reach others. Gustavo seemed to grasp this. Utilizing this concept, he couldn't merely obstruct sensations. He could also transmit misleading information. He recalled he was gripping his opponent. He thought he had seized both his arms, but that was incorrect. That presentation finally concluded. But before the end, our boy had already exited the room. Remembering aspects of the confrontation, he understood everything was in his boss's right hand. It was time to compose the report. The challenge was for the deception to succeed. Lee needed to know precisely when he would be attacked. The team leader was poised to finish it all in one strike. Gustavo realized intuition could function similarly to foresight, a skill only the finest possess after enduring numerous battles. Gustavo still couldn't interpret others' actions to that extent, but he could merge his intuition with his senses. Our boy's heart began to race. He had just stumbled upon an incredible source of insight. He could acquire this ability as well. In the blink of an eye, he dashed toward the team leader. Lee had no clue what was unfolding. He had to force himself away from the desk with a kick. But our protagonist remained completely still. He hadn't moved a single inch. He had perfectly mastered his own senses, focusing solely on his opponent. Our boy sensed his boss's next move and attempted to strike him in that position. But things didn't occur as he had anticipated. Lee appeared to find that sudden assault intriguing. Once more, he employed that enigmatic technique against our boy. Gustavo felt energy emanating from all directions. He was taken aback by a punch to the jaw. The boy had to take several steps back. The panda and the red-haired woman were trying to comprehend how that was feasible. Meanwhile, the team leader wanted to know what that was. Gustavo said this was his report, and he was trying to grasp the answer to that query. That single strike was sufficient to shatter the boy's jaw. To arrive at the conclusion of that question, Gustavo realized this would be the best method. Another observer mentioned that our protagonist went insane. Perhaps he requires therapy. He appears mentally unstable. Surprisingly, Lee remarked that the little punk isn't mistaken. This left our main character bewildered once more. The team leader instructed our boy to tidy up that chaos quickly. He inquired if the others were too occupied. The panda and the redhead seem relaxed though. The chief mentioned they're off duty and can head home while Lovato stays to sort everything out. Since he has a sharp memory, he'll be aware of exactly what's amiss later. Outside, the panda asked what the rookie had done. Kim recognized the rookie employed a sensory illusion technique. They want to find out if Lee instructed the boy without informing them. The team leader claimed he'd never do that. Moreover, instead of submitting the report, Gustavo decided to strike the boss. Lee appeared to relish that moment. In terms of physical abilities, Kim is certain the boy is of high caliber. Yet the chief wonders if he was trained. A pureblood would never behave that way. Nevertheless, the boy followed the command literally, using the technique directly against the leader. Despite discovering something intriguing, our unfortunate boy must clean it all up. The following day, Kim was taken aback when the team leader expressed his wish to assign the rookie to a mission. Since she requires help and they are understaffed, she should take him along. Kim called for our boy, who leaped up with excitement. They are already in the elevator, ascending to a level filled with weaponry, to prepare for the mission. Both begin to don their full gear. Gustavo resembles an elite soldier or someone about to head out for a paintball match with friends. Sirens are ringing out where they are. A black gate has just appeared in the middle of the field. Our protagonist has just arrived at the assigned mission location. They're anticipating an intruder, and more could emerge. This segment of the story introduces us to the typical jargon of these operations. You must learn to interpret it. Our boy gazes at the portal with trepidation, recollecting what transpired 9 years ago. That was when he was rescued by a mysterious figure and vowed to hunt those monsters as well. Today marks the first day of the rest of his life where he will fulfill this dream, but that gate is significantly smaller than anticipated. Gustavo told his boss he's feeling anxious. She completely disregards him, checking her gear. Our boy opted to do the same until something strange occurred. That gate began to expand considerably. This is an anomaly. Kim requested immediate backup, but Central requires video. When the image reaches the office, the chief and the panda were startled. The two must retreat at once. It became excessively perilous. Gustavo understands the situation can escalate very quickly. Creatures will advance without delay. He inquired if their task was complete. Confronted with her silence, Gustavo recalled observing the area through satellite images. There's a nearby town. These individuals are in jeopardy. Central instructed them to evacuate, but Gustavo wants to stay until backup arrives. Kim mentioned around 15 minutes. Once more, Central instructed them to follow commands until the first creature emerged from the gate. Gustavo is puzzled. He doesn't want to retreat now. If they linger too long, they'll become prey for these beasts. Last year, technology reduced traffic fatalities, yet invaders still claim nearly 10,000 lives each year. Immortals are valuable laborers, so they must tread carefully. But the protagonist recognized his companion isn't keen on escaping. Over the comms, Lee questioned what those idiots were doing just standing around. At last, the creature broke free from the portal, utterly enraged, but it was struck by something. Kim discharged her weapon at the beast. Gustavo understands that innocent people are at risk, and he aims to change that. Prepared to fight, Gustavo confessed to his partner that he might be in love with her. More shots were fired. Lee began to feel very anxious. To mask their disobedience, they stated communication is poor. Gustavo was still shooting while his partner had to reload. More monsters are emerging from the portal. So far, the duo is handling containment expertly. They only anticipated 10 creatures that day. They brought limited weaponry. But since the gate's pattern shifted, the number could surge into the hundreds. Gustavo has to determine what to do next because it will become perilous shortly. Shots continue to be fired at the creatures. Kim is also focused on the mission. They are the only ones capable of preventing something worse from occurring. The ammunition is dwindling and the attack pattern is in waves. Gustavo asked if she has a strategy and she replied affirmatively. While the creatures concentrate on the boy, she will take them all out. The situation can't maintain like this. Bullets will deplete soon. And finally, it occurred to our protagonist. One creature is poised to finish him off, but our boy was rescued by his partner. Even without ammo, she can resolve everything through traditional combat. Gustavo was greatly impressed now. They must eliminate the remaining creatures. Kim's agility is remarkable, leaving our protagonist in awe. Without fully understanding how super drugs function, Gustavo is certain of one thing. Kim is far stronger than an average person. He continues supporting her until the ammunition finally runs out completely. It's time for Gustavo to embrace convention. He won't merely be bait. It's his moment to showcase his abilities. Gustavo commenced by crushing the first skull. Then he seized a creature's limb and wielded its body as a club to strike the others. Thus far, they are resisting the assault, but those beasts are truly perilous. Kim needs to wield her knives to eliminate them, leaving a path of corpses. She must keep her focus at all costs. Gustavo noticed the girl is constantly shifting her position to evade attacks. Since our hero is still quite distracted, he got bitten on the arm. But by grabbing his own knife, Gustavo quickly resolved that issue by ending the life of the creature that attempted to devour him. Our hero understood he must not lose concentration. He needs to remain highly focused. Recalling his partner's strategy, he can lure the creatures while she takes them out. There aren't many alternatives. Gustavo is working to refine his senses using all the techniques he has acquired. He gained a sharp awareness of what is unfolding. Kim realized something unusual occurred. Our protagonist succeeded in attracting all the monsters, which is a positive outcome. Our hero began being bitten by the creatures who now only focus on him. Gustavo is facing serious challenges. Kim recognized she might not be able to complete everything alone, but the protagonist won't end the tale now. He's capable of survival. He needs to disregard pain and maintain a clear head. Gustavo defended only against deadly strikes to counterattack. As instructed by the farmer, he employs his entire body to guard an assault. A single invader can result in numerous fatalities. That's why our hero is so resolute. A much larger firearm started firing in that location, eliminating several monsters instantly. Backup finally arrived, remarking that those two are utterly insane. Kim is extremely out of breath and anxious about our protagonist. He just inquired if he allowed any invader to escape. Noticing the boy's wounded body, she replied no. He endured remarkably well. Hearing those words, Gustavo began collapsing to the ground. The support team wants to know if they completed the task. Apparently, there's nothing more to be done. Observing everything left, the supervar frightened. There are at least 200 slain creatures. It's remarkable that 2 individuals managed everything. For 10 well-trained immortals, it would have been challenging, but they only required a drugged human and a hybrid. But she knows our protagonist was the true reason that mission succeeded. Back at headquarters, Lee was furious. That feeble excuse about not being able to hear anything didn't resonate with him. Gustavo stood his ground. The connection was poor. This only made the team leader more furious. They hadn't followed his instructions. Lee stated he was on the verge of losing his own sanity. He just wanted to beat the hell out of both of them. Kim stepped forward to take accountability for what transpired. The team leader inquired if she understood her standing there. She merely responded that she was just an employee. But since they had messed up and disobeyed orders, Lee demanded to know if she planned to resign. Due to their actions, there would be a disciplinary hearing. For now, they were dismissed. Before he departed, Lee called out to the protagonist. He asked him if he felt proud of what he'd done. Gustavo replied no. The team leader told him not to deceive him at that moment. From that day forward, Gustavo was required to write a daily apology letter. Our boy asked if he wouldn't have to face the disciplinary hearing as well. The team boss questioned if he truly wanted that because it was bound to happen eventually. For the time being, just the apology letters would be enough, nothing further. Rumors spread rapidly about what had occurred, how they had taken down several invaders all by themselves. Johan clarified that new hires on probation don't usually contend with standard disciplinary repercussions. They simply get dismissed. Thus, the repercussions of their actions fell completely on Kim. It was genuinely unfortunate. Facing such consequences for disobeying orders is extremely messy. Gustavo was aware there was a village nearby. They had to make difficult decisions to save lives. When the team leader asked if he was proud, our boy had to lie because deep down he was convinced he had made the right decision. The issue was he was growing weary of this nonsense. Exiting the building that day, his teammate caught up to him. She told him he had performed exceptionally well back there. Kim expressed it with total sincerity. That significantly boosted Gustavo's confidence. He knew he had made the right choice. When he arrived home, his mom asked if he had a picture. He queried of whom? She wanted to see the coworkers he spoke about so often. Gustavo informed her that the woman didn't have a profile picture on any platform. Only then did the matriarch reveal her true motive. She was interested in a potential daughter-in-law. Gustavo insisted they were merely coworkers. His mother assured him that's precisely how these things begin and develop later. Even so, he was anxious about the disciplinary hearing. Several individuals were already assembled in a designated hall for the occasion. They were present to assess the behavior of the red-haired woman. The hearing commenced. They all understood she had ignored explicit orders to leave that area. Kim affirmed that was precisely what transpired. Attempting to defend her, Lee contended that matters become intricate in the heat of conflict. The elderly man with glasses instructed him to be silent, but the team leader refused to take back his remark. The meeting ended up being disturbed. Our protagonist had attended as well. One of the officials overseeing the meeting inquired if our boy had been compelled to go on. He replied no. Then they asked if he was aware of what happened to rookies who caused trouble. Gustavo asserted it was the best decision to make at that moment. The old man with glasses demanded to understand what led this young man to think that way. Lee, contradicting the elder, claimed the rookie simply had good common judgment. That's all. Thanks to their actions, they succeeded in saving the lives of innocent individuals. The others fell into complete silence. Lee stated that this is what it's all about. Saving lives is the most crucial aspect of their role. Since he was interrupting so frequently, they requested him to exit. However, the team leader wasn't going to abandon his teammates. Someone told him to be quiet, the team leader responded, asking if that individual had the authority to make him. Our protagonist realized this company was a complete circus. Regardless, Lee insisted that such situations occur. It wasn't even that serious. The atmosphere was growing increasingly tense. The protagonist recognized it would be best to exit that room. Lee advised them that they needed to be adaptable. This entire situation was frightening the rookies. After exiting the room, the extra accompanying the protagonist couldn't determine if that went well or poorly. It was good to see the team leader caring for his members, but he ought not to push his luck. He could jeopardize his own evaluation if he continued this way. Gustavo hadn't noticed Lee was jeopardizing himself by acting that way, especially Lee of all people who was typically such a jerk. After walking for a while, the two bid their farewells. But before the elevator closed, the extra caught the door. It was the panda who had just arrived. Full of curiosity, he asked the rookie how the hearing went. Gustavo replied that the team leader was trying very hard. He was doing it again. The panda wanted to know if anything else occurred, but that only made the protagonist pensive. He recalled the conversation he'd had with the other extra, the one who invited him to join the audit team. Now our protagonist had many decisions to make. He told the panda that nothing else had taken place. Soon after, the rest of the team returned to the office. Lee was enraged. Panda inquired what occurred. Kim stated she had been suspended from missions for the next 30 days. That was an extremely harsh punishment for them. Lee was not pleased with the choice at all. It made absolutely no sense. It didn't appear that harsh to Gustavo. But considering everyone's response, it must have been awful. He didn't know how to obtain information since everyone was remaining quiet. Now they all returned to office duties. Our boy penned his apology letter and delivered it to the team leader. After reading it, Lee asked if the kid was out of his mind. Gustavo mentioned he had never done anything like this before. At least Gusto was being embraced more. Kim was instructing the boy to fight even better. They advised him to utilize his immortal senses more. He even received pointers on how to battle the team leader. Another apology letter was crafted, but the content was becoming bolder each time. Gustavo still attempted to amaze the team leader. He seized the chance to learn a bit more. He relied on his intuition to anticipate movements. He already understood his boss lacked patterns when fighting, making him difficult to read. Gustavo had to depend solely on his instincts, but he ended up being tricked once again. Lee managed to hit our boy effortlessly. Panda was timing the match. It reached 6 minutes, a new record. Feeling his aching back, Gustavo concluded that the team leader was quite skilled. One day, their routine changed entirely. Our boy was still composing his apologies. The team leader summoned him. He wanted to know what that blonde jerk had said to our boy in the elevator. A few days earlier, that extra had invited our boy to join his team instead. He had pretended it was merely a joke as he bid farewell to Gustavo. Very astonished, Gustavo asked how the team leader discovered this. He told him the truth. Lee realized someone was attempting to poach his rookie. Gustavo was frightened by his boss's demeanor and started to feel very anxious. Speaking of the blonde extra, he had just arrived at the office. Lee moved like lightning toward him, violently kicking the unfortunate guy. The senior staff anticipated something like this to occur, but our protagonist remained incredulous. Lying on the floor, the extra asked why this had happened. Lee stated it was because he tried to recruit his rookie. Attempting to defend himself, the extra claimed it was merely a joke. Before the situation escalated further, the man with glasses entered the office. Our protagonist seemed to recognize this individual. He was the head of the external audit crew. He inquired of Lee what he thought he was doing. The eccentric boss claimed he was just having a bit of fun. He merely broke one of the poor guy's arms, no big deal. However, the guy with glasses was not pleased at all. He asserted that Lee was the one overreacting to a harmless joke. That's when the eccentric boss understood everyone was aware of the proposal. He disliked knowing his rookie was being recruited for another department, but the man with glasses remarked that the leader was a madman. Now that he was in the office, the man with glasses sought the protagonist's perspective, considering that team was a nightmare. Lee insisted the man with glasses lacked the authority for that since that rookie was under his wing. Yelling across the entire floor, he ensured the other teams heard him. He cautioned them that if anyone attempted to poach the kid, they'd discover why he's nicknamed the Blender. Gustavo realized at that moment his boss is truly unhinged. The man with glasses declared they value independence in that workplace. So he requested our protagonist's input, knowing he'd be validated either way. Now everyone was watching the kid with keen interest. Gustavo wasn't prepared for such a moment, even if his response was. His leader is deranged, Panda is a complete oddball, and the only woman on the team is frigid. Yet somehow he still opted to remain right there. That left the guy with glasses speechless. According to Johan, that guy had always been a marvel. He pushed a little more, offering to assist our protagonist if the out-of-control leader was the problem. But our boy knows what he's doing. He'd rather learn from that maniac. Hearing this, Lee saw the opportunity to be even more irritating, sticking his tongue out at the glasses guy. The audit leader asked if the protagonist genuinely believed he could learn more from that fool. Our boy replied yes, apparently he's determined to stay. Since they had been dismissed, they exited the office. Now alone, Lee asked why Gustavo was looking at him. It was clear he was going to remain regardless. Once again, they were ordered to get back to work. Panda noted the boss is actually proud of our boy. As he walked past our protagonist's desk, Lee noticed something. He asked the kid what it was. Gustavo replied it was his apology letter. He just hadn't completed it yet. Given the expression that Lunatic gave him, Gustavo began to fret. That letter is essentially a joke, a piece of sarcastic poetry. After a brief session of punches, Panda remarked to the female team member that the count of crazy individuals had just risen to 2. While those two were exchanging punches, another assignment arrived for them. Lee wanted to know what the task involved. The question remained, who would be responsible for carrying it out? For the team captain, the solution was clear. He only has one novice to dispatch this time. Gustavo appreciated that information and was curious about his destination. Lee informed the kid he's heading to the airport. He's going to serve as a human tracker. Gustavo must locate a girl. She's a shape-shifting supernatural being, and the picture displays her true form. She's likely a mercenary carrying crucial documents. That's why their aid was requested. There will be some Transformers involved in this operation. Gustavo knows she can alter her appearance, but she cannot change her scent. Lee inquired whether there would be assistance from other teams. Panda mentioned that the blonde girl is going as well, and probably the Quiet Princess too. The team leader couldn't believe he had to send that average rookie along with those geniuses. But since at least 3 immortals are necessary, the boy must go. Due to a shortage of personnel, it will be 3 freshmen. Our boy is going as protection for the other 2 just to keep himself out of excessive trouble. Lee instructed Gustavo to perform his task properly and ensure nothing happens to the Quiet Princess. Kang from the analysis team approached to brief them on the task. He was about to explain all the mission specifics to the rookies, but the speaker became distracted by something. A bruise on the protagonist's face. Gustavo simply stated he'd had a small conversation with his captain. Then Kang recalled that the poor guy is on Team 3. That clarified a lot. Their mission would occur at the airport. They'd all be disguised as ordinary individuals, and the operation would commence in the morning. They will meet another team on site, the ones truly in charge of the mission. The leader of that other team assumes everyone is already informed about what's going on. Gustavo and the blonde girl will remain inside the airport overseeing everything. Meanwhile, the Quiet Princess will be searching nearby where tickets are bought. Everyone's communication was functioning well, until 2 individuals began approaching the protagonist. They were there to provide protection for them. Gustavo sensed this feeling. He could tell those were Transformers. Apologizing for the interruption, they informed the group they were present for security. Before everything escalated, Gustavo posed a question to Kang. He didn't understand why the Quiet Princess would be left on her own. The poor guy disliked being referred to by his actual name by our protagonist and made that very evident. Kang mentioned that a highly sensitive immortal was requested for this assignment. That's why the Quiet Princess is coming too. The blonde girl remarked that there were too many people involved while the Quiet Princess claimed to be the only true immortal present. Regardless, they need to accomplish the mission and guards will be there to help. When the briefing concluded, the Quiet Princess stood up to exit. She was accompanied by the blonde girl who also had nothing to say. Only our protagonist stayed in the chamber. He apologized to Kang for the actions of the other 2. They're complicated. Kang stated that outcomes carry the most weight here. Gustavo understood he would have to collaborate with those 2 annoyances. On the day of the mission, a random stranger approached the blonde girl asking for her number because he found her attractive. She informed him she was married. Our protagonist noticed this happening right away. He inquired who that jerk was bothering her. After the stranger walked off, the blonde girl mentioned he had exaggerated a bit. Gustavo realized he needed to refocus on everything. Yet all those individuals seemed completely ordinary. Then someone summoned them over to verify a small detail. A person in a blue shirt and denim, a man in his 30s, they needed to begin looking for those traits. Moving calmly through the crowd, the target attempted to remain inconspicuous. He was carrying a sizable backpack. Gustavo couldn't sense anything unusual about the man. The blonde girl recognized our protagonist, didn't grasp why the silent princess received special treatment. She is distinct from everyone else, a true pureblood. Being exceptionally perceptive, she can detect variations in any signal. Now the team is positioning themselves to approach the target. Gustavo started recalling some of his father's lessons. To be a formidable immortal, one requires keen senses, and individuals like that often possess terrible personalities. The old man was relieved to realize his son wasn't a jerk, but also slightly disappointed to find he wasn't that perceptive. However, our boy is capable and learns quickly. He demonstrated that while absorbing knowledge from the team leader, so he decided to take charge in the operation, speaking directly to the target. All this occurred while police began securing the area, keeping the crowd at bay. Nobody was aware of what was happening. Perhaps it was a film shoot. Gustavo started utilizing all his awareness to comprehend the surroundings. Someone asked if there was really only a single target, causing everyone to be on high alert. A strange disturbance began. One of the police officers had already drawn his weapon. As the officer prepared to shoot, the silent princess attempted to regroup with her allies. Several shots were fired into the crowd. The situation was becoming more chaotic by the second. The policeman who had opened fire was just subdued. After hearing all that noise, Gustavo began to worry and moved toward the chaos. That's when he sensed something approaching them, specifically targeting the blonde girl. The poor girl nearly lost her head, but she managed to evade and strike the bald man. Leaving the stranger defeated on the ground, they understood the attackers present were users of psychic abilities. Gustavo could sense the presence of 2 others, but didn't know how many targets were involved in the operation. They were dispersing rapidly. Gustavo knew he had to stop them. 2 days prior to the mission, their files were under review. Kang was impressed with the Quiet Princess. She's a highly capable individual from a conventional family just like the blonde girl. He was also intrigued by our protagonist's record. Everyone was discussing when he faced the team leader. In addition to being quite adept, he appeared to have a friendly demeanor. All the traits they were searching for. The Candlehead instructor had passed through and mentioned that he resembles our protagonist significantly. Having also heard the gunfire, Kang became very anxious about the rookies. Since he was unaware of what was occurring, he needed to leave his post to help the team. He had to find out what was happening. As soon as he entered the airport, one of the police officers caught Kang's eye. That man's presence activated all his senses, and he wondered if he should pursue him. Kang recalled that our protagonist is quite skilled at resolving issues with his fists, so he gave an order. Our boy must pursue that target, and he's authorized to use force. Kang also attempted to reach the other two, but the quiet princess ultimately took a bullet. The protagonist, however, is prepared to continue with his mission. A full-on melee is raging continuously at the airport. Psychic powers are flying everywhere. Having regained some strength, the quiet princess is able to take action. One of the officers had already been taken out. The blonde girl reported several hostiles in the vicinity. She identified 7 targets in total, but the primary one remains the shape-shifting woman. The quiet princess stated she can still fight. That wound in her chest was insignificant. Kang told that poor soul not to attempt anything clever. They were too precious to lose like that. He had to be very stern with those rookies. One of the thugs was poised to shoot them all, but he got utterly crushed by Kang, who fought like a beast. Acting quickly, Kang subdued another goon. It's time to eliminate all these thugs. Downstairs, the man who was disguised as a cop has already changed outfits. Our protagonist caught up to this fine citizen and inquired if he was done fleeing. The target commented on our boy's tenacity, assuming he must be immortal. The protagonist replied if that wasn't already evident. After pondering for a moment, the target said no. Feeling no apprehension, the target asked why the protagonist arrived alone. Gustavo mentioned that backup was on its way. The target responded that coming here all by himself was a blunder on the boy's part. That's when the target's body began a radical transformation. His psychic abilities specialize in physical power, and he just transformed into a mini-Hulk. Since immortals can't die, this thug claimed he's just going to crush our boy's skull. Gustavo realized backup would be delayed by about 10 minutes. For our boy, that's more than sufficient time. He doesn't have much to be concerned about. Soon the thugs at the airport were subdued. The injured are already receiving treatment. Kang realized the operation's target was absent. The shape-shifting woman had disappeared. So the blonde girl was correct. It was merely a diversion to allow the actual target to flee. Downstairs, the protagonist confronts a fierce struggle that nobody truly believes he can withstand. He readied himself to deliver the initial strike. It was already aimed at the protagonist's head. Gustavo blocked it without difficulty. However, the extra was not taken aback, not until he attempted to free his arm from that hold and recognized something was very amiss. Gustavo inquired if the guy had eaten lunch because he appeared to have lost all his strength. Utilizing a bit of his ability, our protagonist shattered that fool's arm with just one hand. The agony was so severe the thug nearly toppled over, and the massage session hadn't even truly begun yet. Sensing he was about to be brutally crushed, the bald bandit attempted to respond. He aimed to land a kick to our boy's head. Recalling his training, Gustavo understood how simple it was to redirect force. It was effortless to defend against a strike from someone with no technique. This provided Gustavo the chance to become a bit more aggressive. Time to rearrange the teeth in that unfortunate thug's mouth. He hurled the unfortunate wretch into the air like a party balloon. The bandit crashed to the ground, visibly mangled. Gustavo told him he lacked animosity. The fight hadn't even lasted 3 minutes. Gustavo still had to await the arrival of backup. Being a curious individual, he began inspecting that enigmatic backpack. It appears shapeshifters can even transform into objects, but she can't convert into solid metal, and our boy is poised to ignite that backpack. Initially, nothing happens until a mouth appeared on the object stating she surrendered. Gustavo didn't like the delay. He stated he had inquiries. The backpack pleaded with him to move the lighter away. Moreover, she couldn't assure she had all the answers, as that could endanger her entire profession. However, she confessed she was open to negotiation. Gustavo said he wasn't interested in that. He asked if she could transform into something smaller like a cigarette so he could light it with his lighter. The woman responded she was already at her limit. Seeing she was still a backpack, Gustavo questioned what she was waiting for to revert back into a person. The backpack mentioned she needed to borrow his jacket. Backup finally arrived on the scene, and nobody could discern what was happening. Gustavo had given his jacket to the woman and defeated the bald bandit. Kang demanded to know what transpired, so our boy reported the situation. He was attacked by the bald bandit and had to give him a serious beating. The backpack the bald guy was wearing was actually the shape-shifting woman. Soon after, the quiet princess showed up too, but our hero informed her that the spectacle was already finished. The bald bandit was promptly apprehended. Just to tease the quiet princess, our hero murmured in her ear that he was the one who captured the target. The woman from the other agency, the police chief, inquired if Gustavo had taken down the bald guy by himself. Our hero said he just got lucky. He hadn't lost his cool just because he found the target, unlike certain individuals. Those Transformers appreciated our hero's attitude until someone asked if he had any clue who he just knocked out. Confronted with our hero's ignorance, even the shape-shifting woman was astonished. That bandit is sought after in multiple areas and goes by the alias Rhinoceros. He has a significant bounty on his head. Gustavo soon discovered that Citizen is tied to very perilous organizations. What he did there was remarkable. People assumed the fight was extremely brutal, and since our hero is immortal, they figured he'd already healed. Only Gustavo knew it just took one strike. Kong was quite satisfied with the outcome of the operation and praised our hero. Now it's time to tally some figures. Everything that transpired wasn't included in the contract. One of their teammates halted the fight without using any equipment, which made that woman a bit upset. Nevertheless, she consented, but she had a question to pose as well. She wanted to know the level of that promising newcomer. Gustavo introduced himself to her, stating he was merely a new recruit. Back at the office, Lee remarked that our hero doesn't need to disclose his name in every operation unless he wants to become well known. Gustavo acknowledged that's a tough habit to break. Returning to the investigation, they found out that the Bald Bandit is affiliated with a highly dangerous organization. The ones behind everything were this group called Prometheus. The girl was carrying classified information for their organization, extremely sensitive data. Before leaving the team leader's presence, Lee inquired if our hero felt pleased about apprehending a terrorist. Our boy said yes. Returning to his own desk, he was instructed to write a report, and this time to do it correctly. This organization consists of mad scientists who aim to make all humans exceptional, just like the deity who shared fire with humanity. Reflecting on this, Gustavo realized the world is filled with insane people. If insanity could fly, you'd never see the sky. At that moment, a man with glasses approached the hero and requested him to follow. Gustavo was led to another room where a man was already waiting for him. It was Mufasa who wanted to see him, and he asked our boy to take a seat. Since he introduced himself very formally, Mufasa asked if the boy did that for the police and the Transformers. The boy admitted he had made a mistake. Mufasa was perfectly fine with it. People occasionally make mistakes. But he was aware of what happened with the terrorist and asked if our boy desired anything. Gustavo mentioned he would like a promotion, and Mufasa appreciated the ambition. However, what he had accomplished wasn't significant enough to secure something like that. It was only impressive because a newcomer had done it. Realizing this, Gustavo asked why he was summoned into the room. Mufasa mentioned he wanted to commend him personally and once more inquired if the boy desired anything. Our protagonist paused briefly before saying that cash is always appreciated. He gave part of the reward to his mother, who was quite pleased with it. Following that airport mission, Gustavo was assigned to multiple field tasks. Now he comprehends why the team leader is somewhat eccentric. In just 3 months, Gustavo apprehended 5 paranormal thieves. In addition to aiding in closing 10 portals that emerged in the city, he also discovered that the team leader despises undertaking such missions. He also dislikes the boy's reports, but that's due to the protagonist's actions. He details trivial matters like how many times the team leader digs in his nose. During this period, he also continued to train rigorously. He no longer gets knocked out by a few strikes from the team leader. In fact, Lee doesn't spend over 10 minutes on this kind of practice with the boy. Gustavo always learns something during that brief time, but he still hasn't managed to find a weakness in the team leader. 3 months post-operation, Kim is filled with animosity. She declared she's going to eliminate them all. She's seated at a restaurant table among her colleagues. She had been talking to herself. Whenever she drinks a bit, she dozes off and starts babbling. Enjoying the laid-back moment, Panda asked his boss if he thought he could land a girlfriend. Lee replied he isn't a fortune teller. Then, gazing at our protagonist, the eccentric leader warned him not to get too intoxicated. He wouldn't want to see the young man causing chaos. That restaurant is within the company, specifically for immortals. It's a calm yet cozy setting. Everyone is seizing the chance to drink heavily, and Gustavo began to grow very inquisitive. Lee instructed the kid not to stare at him like that. But what our protagonist wished to know was how much he had evolved in the past months. So he asked the leader if they could spar for real. It was a suggestion that left his fellow colleagues rather impressed. Lee presumed our boy was completely inebriated, but Gustavo insisted he was okay. The truth is the team leader relished that suggestion. He's already on his way to the training area. Our boy followed him there as well. Lee questioned if Gustavo wanted to be brutally knocked out. Our boy responded that wasn't needed. Their training had become increasingly tedious. It was time to introduce genuine aggression. Panda went to check what was happening and heard the impacts through the door. Those two are unleashing all the brutality they've learned in life. Gustavo keeps feeling pressured, but he managed to fracture his boss's arm. Even so, that's still insufficient. Lee was already prepared to smash the poor guy's skull, but our protagonist managed to block that strike. He realized he would be caught off guard right after. The arm he had fractured just moments ago struck him. The force on the protagonist's head was quite remarkable. That fight seems to have concluded. Panda inquired if the rookie could also utilize that object, since he observed he had broken the chief's arm. Lee mentioned they are distinct situations. Gazing at the protagonist who lies unconscious on the ground, Lee recognized he is very unique. Someone is reviewing the records of that year's new recruits, and he noticed the protagonist immediately, the individual spreading various rumors. So he requested his secretary for a comprehensive file on our boy. His assessment is quite satisfactory. The guy realized that Gustavo knows how to get things accomplished. But his skill as an immortal isn't particularly strong. It's almost as if he possesses no aptitude. It's remarkable that he is part of the external security team while having limited capabilities in that field. The secretary stated that in the most recent field operation, our boy received top marks. However, while evaluating other traits, that man discovered the boy is average in some aspects. There was something unique about him, too. It's noted in our boy's file that he hardly ever gets intoxicated. Thus, he concluded that he's merely an oddball who fights exceptionally well, but cannot control himself and lacks the judgment of an immortal. It will be essential to remove him from that situation. Reviewing his own file, Gustavo asked how immortal abilities are assessed. Panda replied it's through observation, and he was also part of that disciplinary hearing. His rating is low in that category because he committed a punishable act. Nevertheless, Gustavo disagrees with that. He should receive a higher score. His behavior at work was also rated poorly, perhaps because he struggles too much against the team leader. For 2 months, he has been shouting in that area, which disrupts the other employees at the company. Gustavo also doesn't comprehend why it states there that he's capable of consuming a lot. The one accountable for that evaluation, the eccentric chief, commended our boy because of that ability. Concerning the red mark beside his name, it signifies that someone is monitoring the boy. Gustavo felt relieved. He feared it could mean a risk of dismissal. Panda confirmed that it is indeed the case. If the boy doesn't produce satisfactory results in the upcoming assessment, he will be the first to be let go. That ultimately left our protagonist very anxious. A loudspeaker announced for the new recruits to assemble at the training field. That is part of their evaluation. Our protagonist's friends are present as well, and they are already aware that our boy was the first to attract negative attention. Gustavo was unaware the file could be viewed by everyone, and he felt disheartened about that. His friends encouraged him not to lose hope. If he set up a popcorn stand in front of that building, they'd have loyal customers. The moment has arrived to commence the exam, so the new recruits must position themselves now. As our boy walks away, he asked if his friends had ever seen the movie The Sixth Sense because there is a significant plot twist that astonishes everyone. In a room filled with cameras, everything in this building is under surveillance. Mufasa went there too. He expressed he is very curious about what is happening and would like to witness it because it's going to be very entertaining. A clash between the top recruits of that company. Our protagonist is set to be one of the first to battle, and his rival will be the Quiet Princess. Clearly, they don't have much fondness for each other. The fight commenced with great intensity. Our protagonist recalled something that had happened earlier. He was being assessed by someone. He had to discern which cards were distinct by focusing on minor details. To complete that task, it took him just over 3 seconds, which is an impressive feat. Our boy now aims to take down the Quiet Princess. When they viewed the footage of him training on the gravity machine, they could hardly believe their eyes. 12 times normal gravity is essentially 3 times what an average recruit can endure. The unfortunate Quiet Princess is getting pummeled. She cannot respond to any of our protagonist's strikes. She is being ravaged in this challenge. The protagonist's lung capacity is also excellent, and his physical power is extraordinary. Just like the reflexes he possesses, that represents his reaction time. His flexibility is also utterly remarkable. His score in this section is significantly above the average for immortals, and the Quiet Princess is discovering that in the most unfortunate way. Our boy had to apologize to her since he had been concealing his actual strength until now. After encountering that wild leader, Gustavo realized that isn't required, so he won't conceal his true capabilities anymore. He resolved to excel in every aspect of that place, completely obliterating the Quiet Princess's face. Only one assessment remained for our protagonist. He is non-standard and S. After that, Lee had to reprimand the protagonist. He shattered the Quiet Princess's teeth and those of the blonde girls too. Gustavo recalled he also did that to his friends, knocking out the boy with red hair. Lee asked if the boy happened to be a dentist. Gustavo mentioned he's just a level 3 employee at that place. But since the response was insolent, Lee nearly yanked the boy's teeth out. On his way home that day, a car approached our protagonist. It's that peculiar guy who was scrutinizing his file. For goodness' sake, another Korean name, I can't stand it anymore. Let's refer to this guy as Top Knot Face. He offered him a lift now, the matter inside the car. Top Knot Face stated he has a project in progress and has a position available. That's why he'd like the protagonist to accept that offer. Gustavo doesn't even know how to respond to him now. Top Knot Face instructed the boy to keep working. He just needs to start when the project kicks off as well. Taking an interest in the boy, he asked if he enjoys eating meat. It was a question that seemed irrelevant, but our boy ended up being released. Top Knot Face contacted someone and informed his superior that he had reached out to the protagonist. He realized he is quite intelligent and must understand what that implies. Upon arriving home, the protagonist's mother asked why he had received that meat. Gustavo mentioned it's because he puts in a lot of effort. After the trial period, our boy advanced to a level 3 employee and gained access to additional documents as well as a salary boost. His mother is still hoping to have a grandchild, while our boy relocated to be nearer to his job. However, a significant detail about his life is that his team hardly has any tasks to accomplish. Lee stated he's stepping out for a meeting. He recalled asking Kim why their eccentric leader doesn't have performance assessments. She replied that it's because they don't actually do much. Gustavo contended that they had completed many operations recently. The girl answered that they merely offer assistance. That's the reason they aren't assessed. Through her, he learned that the higher management disapproves of their leader. That's why they receive so few assignments. The panda is the one who ends up putting in the effort, doing numerous favors for other groups. Gustavo volunteered to assist him, but Panda is already accustomed to this routine. Our boy dislikes idling about. Panda mentioned they do work hard at times. The team leader occasionally brings in something substantial. In their group chat, they agreed to share a meal together. Panda took the lead. They inquired if it was his residence. Panda replied no. It's the external conference room. Its codename is Panda's house. The projector was activated to display the briefing materials. Lee requested everyone's attention. They just uncovered a new substance in the white portal, an ambient stone. It's capable of storing aura, the same energy utilized by psychics. It acts as a tool to alter that energy. The analysis team discovered it could potentially be a future power source. Not all stones can retain the same energy capacity. Of the ones examined thus far, the top performers are rated AA. A Category D stone can energize a plane flying from Korea to the United States. A Category A stone has enough power to disable an S-rank transformer. And reportedly, a stone of that classification has been found. At least 50 of them have already been discovered. The psychic organization secured them, but the details were leaked. Possessing these stones is vital, and they requested assistance from the government. It will be up to Havai Communications to ensure their transfer is secure. They will receive some stones in compensation. That's why they are assembled there. Lee is going to present the key information to them along with specifics about the whole situation. The team was ultimately taken aback by this news. Lee wanted to know if our protagonist could join this mission. He sought Panda's opinion, who needed to contemplate it. However, he has confidence too, believing in the boy's abilities. So everything was settled until our boy decided to pose a question. He inquired why they were assembled in that room. The insane boss mentioned they are busy working. Those remarks ignited a lot of enthusiasm in our guy. The forthcoming ambient stone will belong to them. 2 days later, they found themselves in the field within a secured zone brimming with guards. A man managed to breach those defenses, causing significant concern among the regular soldiers. Directly behind the insane boss is our protagonist. He is stating that this is a crucial mission for the immortal forces. The target continues to flee in desperation, but our protagonist and his partner persist in executing the mission until they lost sight of the target. Regular soldiers recognized what was occurring and urged them not to proceed. But our protagonist is determined to enter that portal to achieve the goal of his mission.